What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty. Join my Discord if you want to chat and share your thoughts, the link is in the description. 3MB Chapter 71 I am the National Preceptor early next morning. On the rooftop of Cayenne. The sun has not come out yet, and there is a faint purple air in the distant sky. The huge banana crocodile on the roof of the Cayenne Tower has not yet been illuminated by the sun, like a giant beast hidden in the darkness that swallows the sky and vomits the sun. Cheng Cheng, who was sleeping cross-legged under the phantom beast spirit tree, slowly opened his eyes. There was a hint of coldness in the air. Looking at the quilt that had been put on his back for some time, Cheng Cheng felt very warm again. The temperature difference between day and night in the desert is very large, especially in the current summer. The maximum temperature difference can reach an astonishing 50 degrees. However, with Cheng Cheng's current physical strength, even without any protection, he is almost immune to the cold and heat. Damn it, this water of life hasn't increased at all. As soon as Cheng Cheng opened his eyes, he took out the Great Holy Grail, looked at the crystal clear water inside and sighed. When he fell asleep last night, the water level was close to 1/3 of the level. After a night, the water level did not rise at all. He clearly remembered that when the water level began to rise, it happened to be the time when Lao Sha went out to repair the house. When the water level stopped rising in the middle of last night, it was also the time when Lao Sha had repaired all the houses. Creak. The wooden door of the rooftop was slowly pushed open, revealing Tuanzi's little head. Then she closed the door carefully, walked to the side of the rooftop with her sword in hand, and started practicing her sword horizontally and vertically. It was just that Tuanzi accidentally glanced at Cheng Cheng's position and found that the master had woken up, so he complained angrily to Cheng Cheng. "Master, that Lao Sha didn't come back last night, did he run away?" Cheng Cheng smiled slightly, stood up, stretched, and said, "Don't worry, he has signed a contract with the master, so he can't run away." "What's the use of a contract? That Lao Sha doesn't seem to be a person who can abide by the contract," Tuanzi said vigorously while waving the Zhenhai sword vigorously. Cheng Cheng smiled and said, "The contract signed in front of the Great Holy Grail cannot be violated by him." Tuanzi said softly, stopped talking, and continued to wave the Zhenhai sword, which was taller than her. Advertisement Cheng Cheng looked at Tuanzi practicing and couldn't help but think of his own scene at Marine headquarters at that time, which was almost exactly the same as Tuanzi. He took another look at the fantasy beast spirit tree in front of him. The size was almost unchanged from last night. "A little slow, system, let's proceed to the next mission." "Yes, uncle, the next check-in task has been started." The check-in location is Yuba. Close black lens bracket information about Yuba quickly emerged in Cheng Cheng's mind. He had been to Yuba with Princess Vivi and Luffy before. The former oasis city has now become a desolate ruins after years of drought and war. The last time I went there, I only saw an old man digging for water, but other than that, I didn't see anyone else at all. However, the check-in location this time is very close. Somersault Cloud. Cheng Cheng shouted to the sky, and after thinking about it, he asked for Tuanzi's Dragon Slayer sword, leaving the Zhenhai sword for Tuanzi to continue practicing. "Tuanzi, I'll go out for my master. It may take about 3 days. If it's faster, I'll be back in 2 days. During this time, you can take care of the spiritual tree at home and practice well." After Cheng Cheng stepped on the somersault cloud, he told Tuanzi and quickly flew in the direction of Yuba. Cayenne's management is now on the right track, and Lao Sha doesn't know where he has gone, but he must have escaped as far away from himself as possible. Except for the unstable factor Lao Sha, no one else dared to cause trouble in Cayenne. So Cheng Cheng is not very worried about this, not to mention that not everyone can bully Tuanzi now. Along the way, Cheng Cheng also lost interest in looking at the desert scenery. He lay on the soft somersault clouds and looked at the rapidly retreating white clouds in the sky, but he still found it very interesting. He had never observed white clouds from this angle before. Time passed quickly, and in a daze, Cheng Cheng didn't know whether he fell asleep or not. He just felt that the white clouds in the sky were retreating slower. "So I lay down and looked down, and sure enough I saw the ruins I had seen before." Advertisement, Cheng Cheng turned his eyes and was a little surprised to find that there was a neat row of trees on both sides of the Sandola River, which was full of ruins. The row of emerald green saplings were like gems set in the yellow desert, so dazzling that it was difficult for Cheng Cheng to ignore them. "I clearly remember that when I came here last time, there was nothing on both sides of the river. Who on earth would plant trees here?" Cheng Cheng couldn't help but look puzzled, and the connected somersault cloud lowered its flight altitude and flew towards the green trees. When the distance got closer, Cheng Cheng saw that besides the trees, there were 10 young people busy nearby. Some of them were cleaning up the rubble, and some were cleaning up the garbage on the river. Although everyone was sweating profusely, their faces were full of joyful smiles. Cheng Cheng jumped and landed on the ground. He slowly walked towards the young people who were working. The young people who were busy quickly discovered Cheng Cheng, a stranger, but after taking a look at him, they ignored him and continued to work on their own tasks. "Brother, what are you doing? I remember there was no one here before, right?" Cheng Cheng asked the young man beside him with a smile. It seems that this man is not much older than Cheng Cheng. He has strong muscles and a very honest appearance. At first glance, he seems to be the kind of loyal and honest person. The young man chuckled, scratched his head and said, "There were no people here before, but now we all come here with the Kusha leader." The Kusha leader said that Yuba should be restored to the oasis it was 3 years ago. At this time, a young woman also came over. She was tall and pretty in appearance. She looked at Cheng Cheng and said with a wary look on her face. Kabas, you are the only one who is honest. You can say anything and you don't even ask who he is. Just answer him. Kabasi said with some embarrassment. Shuya, we are not a rebel army now anyway, we have nothing to hide, right? Bang. The woman named Shuya slapped Kabasi on the back and said angrily. You still say that, shut up. Kabasi had no intention of fighting back at all. He covered his mouth tightly with both hands and looked innocently at Shuya and stopped talking. Who are you? What do you do? Shuya walked in front of Cheng Cheng, stroked the sword on her waist with one hand, and said with an unkind expression. Cheng Cheng smiled slightly, indicating that he had no ill intentions, and said slowly, I am the national master of this country, where is Kusha? Take me to see him. If you were the imperial master, I would still be the princess, Shuya said with disdain. Chapter 72 Black and White Swords. Cheng Cheng looked at the pretty woman in front of him and saw a faint heroic spirit between her eyebrows. I couldn't help but marvel. I didn't expect that a person who was easy to talk to could have such a fierce temper. When I saw him for the first time, I had already reached out to touch the knife. Looking at her firm eyes, Cheng Cheng felt that if he said another inappropriate word, this woman would chop him with a knife without hesitation. So Cheng Cheng stopped talking. After closing his eyes, the invisible domineering force of seeing and hearing unfolded instantly. A blurry image with a radius of 1 kilometer suddenly appeared in his mind. There were nearly 20 faint red dots on the image. Only one of the red dots was slightly brighter, but just this subtle difference was enough for Cheng Cheng to confirm this person's identity. Cheng Cheng looked around to get his bearings, turned around and left directly. When Shuya saw the man with a suspicious identity leaving like this, she looked at his back unwillingly and said, there must be something wrong. Then Shuya tiptoed, and as her figure swept out, her long sword was instantly unsheathed, and she quickly stood in front of Cheng Cheng with the sword. Tell me, who are you? But the next moment her eyes widened, as if she had seen a ghost in the daytime. The white-haired young man with the sword shook his head with a wry smile, and then disappeared out of thin air in front of his eyes. Kabasi also trotted over at this time, looked at Shuya complainingly and said, look at you, you have scared people away. Don't be suspicious all day long. How could there be such an assassin? Shuya looked at Kabasi like an idiot and said, how many times has the leader been assassinated this month? Don't you know how many times you can count it? But this white-haired guy looks like a good guy. He smiles when he sees me, and I think he is also very polite, Kabasi retorted. Shuya narrowed her long and narrow eyes, looked in a certain direction in front of her, and said angrily, you stupid idiot knows nothing. The more this kind of person is, the more terrifying he is. Hurry up and call everyone. That person just now is definitely a master. Maybe the leader's life is in danger now, hurry. After saying that, Shuya rushed forward. There are rows of small trees by the river not far away. The trunks of those trees are only as thick as an arm, and the smaller saplings are only about the height of a person. At first glance, they have just been planted. On the side of the river, Kosha was naked to the waist, with white bandages wrapped around his body and forehead. An extremely long thin sword was inserted beside him. At this moment, he was bending down to gently straighten a small sapling with his hands, and then stamped the soil at the base of the sapling firmly with his feet. Advertisement. After Kosha straightened the sapling, a satisfied smile appeared on his face, as if he had done something great. Then he slowly picked up other saplings beside the river and began to plant them. When Cheng Cheng saw this scene, he instantly understood why the woman named Shuya drew her sword at them when they met. Kosha, it seems that your life is not going well. Cheng Cheng stepped forward and said with a smile. Kosha's bent body froze slightly, and the smile on his face became more and more warm. He turned to look at Cheng Cheng and said, thanks to the intimidation of the Imperial Master, those people did not dare to come openly. Usually there are only a few of them. It's just a kitten or a puppy, it doesn't matter. Even a person with a heaven-defying tenacity like Cheng Cheng couldn't help but sigh in his heart when he saw the scene of Kosha. Being able to bend and stretch as a man, he was a leader who controlled millions of rebels and almost sat on the throne of Alabasta. After learning the truth about the country, he resolutely disbanded all the rebels. Now there are only a dozen people left around me, and I have become an environmentalist who is willing to plant trees by the river. The so-called ability to take it up and put it down is nothing more than that. You are planting trees here and you don't take talent seriously. Why don't you come with me? Cheng Cheng Gate of Opening said straight to the point, with unconcealed appreciation in his pale golden eyes. Kosha placed the sapling in his hand back on the ground. Because his fingers were covered with mud, he pushed up his glasses with his wrist. He replied with a flat smile. What can I do after you and I leave? Now the country has returned to normal, and it has started raining all over the country. My mission was completed on the day I demobilized the 700,000 rebels. Having said that, I was able to complete my mission thanks to the National Preceptor. If you hadn't defeated Crocodile on your own, this country would have been in chaos for who knows how long. Besides, I'm not really a talent, it's just that my brothers think highly of me and give me face. Otherwise, look at the remnants of several Baroque work groups now, and they can hurt me like this. Cheng Cheng looked at the neatly arranged saplings on the side of the river, standing there in an orderly manner like a well-trained army. An extremely long thin sword was inserted upside down on the side. The long sword sparkled in the sunlight. I don't believe you would be willing to spend the rest of your life as a gardener planting trees here, Cheng Cheng said calmly. Kosha said slowly, I think there is nothing wrong with being like this now. Advertisement, really? If that's the case, why do I smell a trace of unwillingness in the air? Cheng Cheng raised the corners of his mouth, with an indescribable smile, and walked slowly towards the sapling that had just been planted by Ko Sha. The moment his hand touched the branches and leaves of the sapling, the familiar voice rang in his mind. Congratulations, Uncle, the Yuba mission has been successfully checked in. Close black lens bracket. Mission reward. Weapons. Interpreter, Dark Chaser. Matching sword skills, Starburst Air Slash. Close black lens bracket. With a flash of white light, 2 long swords, 1 black and 1 white, appeared in Cheng Cheng's hand, and the sword move of Starburst Airflow Slash suddenly appeared in his mind. Why did it go so smoothly this time? A little unreal. However, Cheng Cheng looked at the 2 swords in his hands and smiled from ear to ear. After all, he had already received the rewards, and he was too familiar with these 2 swords. Both of these are Kirito's early swords in Sword Art Online. The Black Sword Interpreter's sword is as black as ink, the blade is thick and domineering, and it is full of invincible and unparalleled momentum. The sword body of the White Sword Dark Chaser is extremely thin and exudes a faint white light. Through the sword body, you can even faintly see the blue river water behind it. Like a holy queen, you can watch it from a distance but not play with it. Cheng Cheng grabbed the hilts of the 2 swords. Dang, dang. He casually held a sword flower in his hand, and the 2 swords let out a soft cry at the same time. After hearing what Cheng Cheng said, Kosha turned his head and looked into the distance. After hearing the sound of a sword behind him, he turned around and looked at the 2 swords, 1 black and 1 white. He was full of energy and couldn't help but praise. What a sword. You also use a sword, do you want to give it a try? Cheng Cheng pointed the 2 swords at Kusha with a smile. Kosha shook his head helplessly. I only use the sword for the convenience of commanding the troops on the battlefield. If you really want to talk about it, I still like to use my fists when fighting. The feeling of punching to the flesh is exciting. This is not what a Confucian general like you would say. Cheng Cheng narrowed his eyes, turned around, flicked his wrist, and swept out a sword. The small sapling next to him was instantly cut into 2 pieces. The sharpness of the Dark Chaser, Cheng Cheng didn't even feel a trace of resistance. Master Imperial Master, you. When Ko Sha saw that the saplings he had just planted were cut down like this, he wanted to say something, but he quickly understood what Cheng Cheng meant and turned to smile bitterly. Master National Preceptor, you are such a dragon-like figure. Why waste your worth on me like this? Chapter 73 Starburst Airflow Slash. Now that you know I'm begging you like this, why don't you agree? Cheng Cheng looked at Ko Sha with a smile, waiting for his answer. Kosha said sincerely. First of all, I am indeed not as strong as you think, sir. Otherwise, I would have just been like you and defeated Crocodile single-handedly. Why would I need to form a rebel army? I know very well how capable I am. Master National Preceptor, you must know better than me. Then Kosha pointed to the bandages on his body and smiled to himself. The meaning is very clear, he is now a useless person. At this time, a beautiful figure rushed over with a sword at an extremely fast speed. Shuya, don't. When Kosha saw that something was not going well, he immediately yelled, but Shuya's sword still struck out. Cheng Cheng took a leisurely step back, the tip of the sword passed across the tip of his nose, and the silver white hair on his forehead was blown by the sword wind. Have you finished the Baroque working group? Now that Kusha is no longer the leader of the rebel army, why do you still have to force people to death? He is just an ordinary person now. Shuya glared at the white-haired man in front of her before finishing. Then you have to rush over again. Kosha hurried over and took Shuya's hand. Don't make trouble. This is the Imperial Master, not a member of the Baroque Works Company. Ah? Shuya was stunned for a moment, looking at the white-haired boy in front of her with narrow eyes, and asked in disbelief. Are you really Cheng Cheng? Are you really the National Master? You are serious. I don't know how many times you have said that these days, I want to meet the hero in your mind. Fortunately, you are really not merciless at all after meeting you today, Kusha said helplessly. Why don't you apologize to the Imperial Master now? Don't be so reckless in the future. Shuya hummed softly, walked up to Cheng Cheng again, looked at him apologetically, and bowed at 90 degrees without hesitation. Master Imperial Master, I'm sorry. It's okay, with your current strength, you can't hurt me, Cheng Cheng said with a smile. After saying that, Cheng Cheng took a fierce step forward and instantly moved in front of Ko Sha. His sword flashed and he struck with his sword. The extremely sharp sword energy caused a cold sweat to break out on Kosha's back. No, Shu Ya's pupils kept dilating and she said anxiously. Advertisement. The sword light cut through the air, leaving a white afterimage in the air. Dang. Dang. There was a burst of metal and stone sounds in an instant and sparks flew everywhere. There were 2 extremely thin steel needles, which were chopped into 4 and fell to the ground. Cheng Cheng looked forward with disdain and said, I'll give you 3 seconds, get out. After seeing this scene, Kosha and Shuya finally understood and realized that the Imperial Master was actually protecting him, and they looked around with vigilance. Master National Preceptor, this should still be from the Baroque Working Group, Kosha reminded him softly as he raised his sword. Cheng Cheng smiled and said slowly, no one can kill you today as long as you are not General Marine. In the direction where Cheng Cheng had been staring, a tall figure stood up from the long sand. The tall figure had a bald head, extremely muscular body, and was wearing a robe similar to that of a monk. He frowned and said, Who are you? How can you block my killer hidden weapon so easily? He is the chief agent of Baroque Works, bonus. He is also a devil fruit user. He can turn any part of his body into a blade. His whole body is as invulnerable as steel. He has assassinated many of my brothers in the past few days. Yes. Ko Sha explained to Cheng Cheng very quickly. Invulnerable. Cheng Cheng looked at the 2 scars on Bonus's chest with confusion, falling into deep doubts. Lang looked at Bonus and said, "Who am I? Didn't Crocodile tell you?" Bonus looked at Cheng Cheng's dazzling white hair, his eyes suddenly widened in disbelief, and then he looked at the huge broad sword behind Cheng Cheng. Without any further hesitation, his feet instantly turned into blades and he ran away at extremely fast speeds. A long trace was cut out of the ground covered with yellow sand. Just in time to practice with you. I hope your body of steel can carry more swords. Cheng Cheng smiled and clenched his swords, and his figure shot out, arriving in front of Bonus in the blink of an eye. Bonus's heart was crossed, and with the inertia of forward motion, he turned both arms into steel blades, crossed them in front of his chest, and crashed towards Cheng Cheng. Destroying slash. Cheng Cheng narrowed his eyes, and 2 sword auras, one black and one white, instantly erupted from his swords. The sword aura was like a python spitting messages, hesitating on the blade. He swept his arms across to wave the interpreter and the dark chaser at the same time. Go up. Starburst air current slash, advertisement dang, dang. As the sword shadows intertwined, sparks flew everywhere. The steel blades on Bonus's arms were instantly shaken to create a crack, and he quickly took a few steps back. Cheng Cheng showed no signs of stopping and continued to charge forward with another horizontal slash. This star explosion air slash has a total of 16 consecutive sword moves, and now he has only used 1 move. The 2 swords continued to be swung, and the black and white sword auras crisscrossed. The black and white swords slashed at Bonus's chest, and there was another sound of gold and stone colliding, and Bonus fell back more than 10 meters. Cheng Cheng's black and white swords whirled and rolled, and the 2 sword energy was like a full moon, slashing at Bonus back, causing Bonus to fall to the ground instantly. What a pity, I just used 3 swords. Cheng Cheng saw Bonus lying on the ground, put away his black and white swords, shook his head and sighed. He didn't have a special hobby of whipping corpses. In order to allow Bonus to carry more swords, Cheng Cheng didn't even use armed hockey, but he didn't expect that he was still so fragile. Shuya swallowed, her face full of shock and admiration, her 2 narrow eyes full of admiration. Kusha, is this our national master? He looks good when he kills people. What kind of person do you think the Imperial Master is? Kosha said for no reason. He was not too surprised by this result. After all, Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai, was killed by Cheng Cheng, so his agents were nothing. The only thing was that Ko Sha still didn't expect Cheng Cheng to draw his sword so cleanly. Tall, rich, handsome, strong, and a perfect man, Shuya said without hesitation. Kosha smiled bitterly and said, I won't say anything else. How do you know that you are rich? I said, Kusha, are you stupid? He is Alabasta's national teacher, how can his salary be high? Shuya immediately looked at Kusha with disgust. Kosha felt bitter in his heart, am I only handsome now? Cheng Cheng, who was not far away, had walked over slowly now, looked at Ko Sha and said, Look, if you continue to stay here, there will be dangers one after another. You're lucky today and I happen to be here, but what about tomorrow? What about the day after tomorrow? Chapter 74 All signed. Kosha looked silently at the brothers who were rushing behind him. Each of these people was holding a gun and saber, and they were looking around vigilantly. These people are all brothers who have followed him through life and death. Not to mention all of them were disgraced, their clothes were also full of patches. Ever since he disbanded the rebel army, they have been following him to the ruins of Juba, hoping to rebuild oases here. Just because they follow me willingly, can I ignore their efforts? If they don't care, can I not care either? But do I really have the ability to protect them? Are you really willing to do that? If you are not willing to give in, what else can you do? I am just an ordinary person, so what can I do? Cheng Cheng smiled slightly, as if he saw the concerns in his heart, and said, You have no idea how powerful you are. Compared with those so-called strong people, all you lack is opportunity. Once the opportunity comes, you will skyrocket, 90,000 miles away. And now, your opportunity has come, and I am standing in front of you. Kosha's eyes turned to both sides of the river, looking at the hundreds of saplings they had planted in the past few days. Some were full of vitality, with green leaves slowly blowing in the wind, sunburned and yellowed. There was also the most pitiful little sapling, which was chopped off by the Imperial Master's sword. The people who came later didn't know what happened here, and they all looked at Shuya in confusion, but Shuya ignored their gazes and looked at Kosha eagerly, but did not speak a word. Momojiji, why are you acting like a big girl? Cheng Cheng mentioned the Dark Chaser, and the sword energy surged on the snow-white sword body, and he swung the sword. A snow-white sword energy roared towards the rows of trees. Swish, 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 the white sword energy flashed in the air, and all the trees lined up beside the river were split into 2. The originally uneven trees of different sizes all became the same height at this moment, and the fractures were neatly positioned. Everyone looked at Cheng Cheng angrily. Even Shuya, who knew Cheng Cheng's identity, said angrily, How could you do this? Even if you are the national master, you can't destroy this tree, right? But they were all planted with our hard work. Cheng Cheng looked calm and did not answer her, he just walked slowly to the sapling that he had cut off for the first time. There was a flash of yellow light in his hand, and the great holy grail appeared in his hand. Then Cheng Cheng gently put his finger into the holy grail and brought out a drop of water of life. Advertisement water drops slowly dripped down the tip of his index finger. This drop of water of life fell right on the root of the sapling, and disappeared instantly after touching the ground. Kosha and Shuya were the closest, and they looked at each other, not knowing what the Imperial Master was doing. But the next moment they felt something was wrong. The ground was shaking, and both of them swayed at the same time and almost fell down. Then under the shocked gaze of everyone, I saw that with the small sapling as the center, the ground began to slowly bulge, a deep gap opened, and the soil below rolled towards the ground. The original sapling, which was only half alive, was rapidly growing and growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a few breaths, the tree trunk, as small as a bamboo pole, grew into a towering tree. The huge tree crown blocked the sky and the sun, the location where Kosha and the others were instantly turned into a shady tree shade. The scorching sun shines through the dense gaps between the leaves, and little bits of sunlight like silk threads can shine on them. However, at this time, these sunshine no longer seemed so vicious, but like an indispensable interest in a peaceful life. Oh my god, what did I see? Did my eyesight get tricked? Wasn't this just a sapling just now? I must be dreaming. Shuya looked at the towering tree in front of her with the same stupidity and murmured, "It's really not human." Kosha suddenly stood up and clenched his fists. "Even if what you said is true, sir, there is no war in this country now, so what can we do?" "That's right. I still like how energetic you are now." Cheng Cheng smiled and shook his head. "Brother Ko, do you think that a country without war has nothing to do?" "I won't talk about the brothers around you. I was walking in the desert of Alabasta and saw many bones on the roadside with no one to collect them. I also saw two people fighting to death for a bite to eat, and even more so for half a bucket of water. You sold your biological daughter. You grew up in a slum and you should know how poor this country is." Kosha nodded, his eyes glowed with new light, and asked, "Then what should I do?" "It's very simple, come with me. I can make you stronger than you can imagine," Cheng Cheng said calmly. He didn't believe there was a man in the world who could truly refuse strong strength. Kosha continued to ask, "I dare to ask the master a question, what do I need to pay?" "Advertisement, sure enough, talking to smart people is easy." Cheng Cheng stared into Kosha's eyes and said slowly, "You only need to sign a life and death contract with me. You are responsible for constantly becoming stronger. In half a year, you will join me to participate in a war." "What if I'm still not strong after half a year?" Kosha asked rhetorically. Cheng Cheng said nonchalantly, "Then just think that I saw the wrong person and it has nothing to do with you." Kosha looked at the eyes of the brothers around him, and the atmosphere was quiet for a while. Although they didn't speak, Kosha knew from their eyes that they were all waiting for his answer. "Can my brothers also become stronger?" Kosha took a deep breath and asked in a deep voice. For a moment, the people behind Kosha were anxious and spoke hurriedly. "Boss, what do you care about what we do? Just go and follow the national preceptor yourself." "Kosa, what do you think you are? You really can't live without us, right? Anyway, I still want to earn money and marry a wife, so I won't go to the Imperial Preceptor's side." "I won't go either. I have a stomachache and feel uncomfortable recently." "I won't go either. My left foot stepped on my right foot today." They are not stupid. They clearly know that this is a huge opportunity for Kosha. If Kosha takes care of them and offends the powerful national master like a dragon, he misses this opportunity. If so, it will affect Kosha's entire life. "That's not how you're supposed to be a brother." Shuya walked up to Kusha and said, "Kusha, we people insisted on staying with you to help you, but don't think that we need your help. You have figured it out. Now since you are with the national preceptor, if we are around, then there will definitely be no problem with safety, so we will all leave." Kusha's eyes turned red for a moment. "The wind is so strong, why did it start? Your Majesty, I still..." "What is it? 13 of you. I signed all of them. The whole Rainland is my territory. Can't I afford to support you?" Cheng Cheng waved his hand and said boldly, "From today on, you are a captain under me, and your 12 brothers are all your team members." In an instant, everyone looked excited and gave out a burst of warm cheers. The honest-faced Kabasi scratched his head and asked, "Master National Preceptor, how many tens of thousands of people do we have in our team now?" "No, everyone is here." Cheng Cheng pointed at all of them and said, Chapter 75 Tuanzi's 3-sword style. In the early morning of the next day, the sky was slightly bright. Cheng Cheng said goodbye to everyone in Kosha, lay on the somersault cloud, and started his return journey. Yesterday, all 13 of him, including Kosha, signed the Great Holy Grail contract. He looked at the water of life in the Great Holy Grail with great distress. In the past 2 days, not only has there been no rise, but the water in the cup has almost bottomed out. Cheng Cheng was lying on the somersault cloud holding the Golden Holy Grail, looking up at the sky, wanting to cry but without tears. But all in all, this trip went smoothly. Not only did he complete the system tasks, he was rewarded with 2 swords and the sword move Star Explosion Air Slash, and he also signed contracts with 13 people at once. Now including Lao Sha, there are 14 soldiers under his command. Thinking of this, Cheng Cheng's mood improved a little. Looking at the rapidly retreating white clouds in the sky and listening to the sound of wind passing by his ears, Cheng Cheng closed his eyes and re-experienced the incomparably gorgeous 16 consecutive sword moves in his heart. Starburst Air Slash has a total of 16 sword moves, which are as continuous as a tide, and the sword power is higher and higher. Each sword is also preparing for the next sword when it is released. When the last one is struck, when the sword was handed out, the previous 15 sword moves were already superimposed. Therefore, especially the last sword is the pinnacle of the whole set of sword moves, and it can truly be called the Star Explosion Air Slash. Kirito, you are really a genius. Cheng Cheng closed his eyes and admired. Half a day had passed before he knew it, and he was already above the rainy ground in the blink of an eye. Everyone in the rain looked up at the sky and pointed at the golden clouds in the sky. Look, it's actually a golden cloud. Oh, how come I see someone else up there? I saw it too. Wow, if you can step on golden clouds, this person must be a god, right? Cheng Cheng slapped his forehead. He vaguely realized that the sword move was too deep and was close to the rain. Sure enough, he hadn't noticed it yet.
Advertisement. Forget it, just see it when you see it. There is no need to hide this little thing now.
In desperation, Cheng Cheng simply let the somersault cloud stop directly on top of the banana crocodile over Cayenne. When he walked down, he was instantly recognized by the crowd below. Oh, it's the National Preceptor, the National Preceptor. It's true, the National Master is so handsome, I really want to marry him. It turns out to be the Imperial Master, then it's okay. Although everyone said their own things, they all knelt down in the direction of Cheng Cheng without exception. They didn't stand up until Cheng Cheng could no longer be seen. Cheng Cheng walked slowly onto the rooftop, feeling something in his mind. He hurriedly took out the Great Holy Grail and took a look. He found that the water in the Great Holy Grail was slowly rising, and finally stopped at about a quarter of the height. Is this okay? Cheng Cheng was a little dumbfounded. Lao Sha had worked hard all afternoon to build the house, and the water in the cup had only reached this level. He had just stood on a somersault cloud and circled around the city, and he had so much willpower. Already? Or did it happen due to other reasons? Cheng Cheng sighed and stopped thinking about this nonsense for the time being. Looking up, he couldn't help but smile, and saw Tuanzi sitting cross-legged under the Phantom Beast's spirit tree with his eyes closed to meditate. Her breathing was smooth, long and continuous, and there was a light mist surrounding her body. As the air temperature increased, it gradually turned into white mist. The tip of the azure dragon slaying knife pointed downwards, touching the ground but not inserting into the ground. It stood in front of Tuanzi with a strange and coincidental balance, and it made a buzzing sound from time to time. For a moment, smoke evaporated, making her look like a female sword fairy. Cheng Cheng looked at the eldest disciple in front of him in astonishment for a moment, and said to himself with some uncertainty, "Is this just raising a sword?" He shook his head helplessly again. What kind of monster did I accept? Then Cheng Cheng stopped looking at Tuanzi and turned to look at the fantasy beast spirit tree in front of her. 2 days have passed and the size and height are the same. Advertisement: there is no difference at all from before I left. The golden spiritual tree is exuding little bits of starlight. The roots of the tree are inserted into the void. You can see the spiritual energy slowly transporting inside the translucent tree roots. However, it is now blue sky and daylight, so it is not as dazzling as at night. Cheng Cheng stood in front of the Phantom Beast spirit tree for a while, took out the interpreter and the dark chaser from the space rings, and placed them on the table not far away. Tuanzi slowly opened his closed eyes, and immediately looked at the 2 swords on the table, the interpreter and the dark chaser, one black and one white. "Master, are you back?" Tuanzi said happily, but his eyes were always on the black and white swords. Cheng Cheng walked over, lightly tapped Tuanzi on the head, and said angrily, "These 2 swords were originally given to you." "Master, I am used to using one sword, but suddenly I feel uncomfortable using 2 swords. "Hey, the best person in the world is the master." Tuanzi grinned, revealing 2 rows of white swords, and hurriedly ran over to pick up the black and white swords on the table. He put it in front of his eyes and looked at it carefully. After seeing the white sword body of the dark chaser, he couldn't help but exclaimed, "It's so beautiful." She reached out and gently stroked the toughness, carefully, for fear of accidentally breaking the thin blade. After a while, she turned her eyes to the dark-skinned interpreter and waved it hard twice in her hand. The blade cut the air and made a sound of breaking through the air. "These 2 swords are a set. If you like it, you have to switch to the dual sword style. Master will put away the dragon-slaying sword for now," Cheng Cheng said with a smile on the side. "But you don't worry, I'm just keeping it for you." Tuanzi immediately became anxious and quickly ran to the dragon slayer. He held the demonic dragon sword, the interpreter and the dark chaser in his arms and said hurriedly, "This is all mine. Master, your name is Cheng Cheng. You must be honest. There is no reason to take back what you have given away."
Cheng Cheng smiled helplessly. "Okay, that's great. Now you know how to reason with me. Where is that crazy girl who stole or robbed wine? I miss her so much."
"I don't care. These 3 swords are mine anyway." Tuanzi rolled his eyes and said firmly. Cheng Cheng rubbed Tuanzi's head and asked, "3 swords? Do you also want to learn from your Uncle Zoro to practice the 3-sword style? Then you have to bite a sword with your teeth. Do you know that biting like this can't help but hurt tired? The most important thing is that if you bite the hilt for a long time, your cheeks will become bigger, and you will have a bigger face when you grow up, making it difficult to marry. You don't have to think about these things, but Master will definitely consider them carefully for you." Tuanzi rolled his eyes again and ignored the Master. Instead, he threw the dragon slayer into the sky, and then held the interpreter and the dark chaser in his hands very quickly, while his eyes were fixed on the falling dragon slayer. I saw the dragon slayer sword falling rapidly. When it was about to approach the ground, the entire blade suddenly stopped and just hung in the air, motionless. Cheng Cheng's eyes widened and he swallowed silently. Chapter 76 Developing Sword Skills. The dragon-slaying sword floated in the air and made a gentle buzzing sound. After it lasted for about 10 seconds, the dragon-slaying sword seemed to have lost some kind of power and crashed to the ground. Tuanzi's face was rosy, and his forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat. He looked at his master proudly. I won't bite. I'm not proficient yet. When I become proficient, I can control the Dragon Slayer knife in the air. Come with me, fighting. What kind of swordsmanship are you doing? You can actually control the dragon slaying knife with your mind. Cheng Cheng asked softly without changing his expression. Tuanzi said happily. Master, after you left that day, I was really bored by myself, so I started practicing water breathing while staring at it. As I watched, I found that it suddenly moved, and then I tried to use it. I controlled it with my thoughts, but I didn't expect it to be successful. Am I very powerful, Master? If you don't teach me these things, I will learn them myself. Cheng Cheng looked embarrassed, and sighed helplessly in his heart. If I knew how to fly the sword, I would have given it to you long ago. But as a master, of course he cannot say that he is not good in front of Tuanzi. A happy smile appeared on his face, and he patted Tuanzi on the head and said, Master didn't teach you just because the time has not come yet. He wanted to wait until you learned the breath of water from Grandmaster before teaching these messy swordsmanship. Master really didn't expect you to be able to understand it on your own. Tuanzi laughed again, shook the dark chaser in his hand, and blue water vapor surged on the white sword for an instant. He raised his head and said, Look, Master, now I have grandmastered the breath of water. Hurry up and teach me something else. Bar. Cheng Cheng silently looked up at the sky. System, thank you so much. Open black lens bracket. What's wrong, uncle? Close black lens bracket. It's okay, I just think the starburst airflow slash I gave you is great. Uncle, this is what it should be. Close black lens bracket. Cheng Cheng nodded happily again, and when he turned to look at Tuanzi, he had regained his composure and said slowly, It's not bad, but you are still far away from being a grandmaster. Don't take it lightly. Take the breath of water. But depending on your current level, you can learn new sword skills. I will teach them to you today. Tuanzi ignored the first half of the sentence and laughed up at the sky. Ah. I can learn new sword skills again, and I can become stronger again. Cheng Cheng walked up to Tuanzi and took her black and white swords, and said calmly, Today, the master will teach you a set of powerful but difficult to learn sword moves, Star Explosion Air Slash. Tuanzi, take care of yourself. Advertisement. After Cheng Cheng finished speaking, he suddenly clenched his swords, and black and white sword ores of different colors appeared on the two swords of the Interpreter and the Dark Chaser, attached to the swords. Then with a light drink, my two-sword energy suddenly doubled, reaching 1 meter in length. The next moment, on the rooftop of Cayenne, there were black and white swords flying across the sky. Horizontal slash, forward horizontal slash, roundabout slash, parallel slash with two swords, crossed upward slash, crossed downward slash, thrust forward downward slash, holding the sword in the backhand and then repeatedly slashing horizontally. The 15th sword moved with a fierce thrust, and when the 16th sword was drawn out, the sword light of the black and white swords had reached 10 meters. The last sword move is the cross cut. The huge sword energy separated from the sword body, forming a black and white cross, and slashed towards the sky in the distance. The black and white cross sword energy quickly flew hundreds of meters before dissipating in the void. Tuanzi's black pearl-like eyes suddenly shone with starlight, and he looked at Cheng Cheng with admiration. Master, you were so handsome just now. Cheng Cheng put away his surging momentum and regained his composure. His silver-white hair was blowing in the wind. He walked towards the balcony entrance without looking back. Practice your sword well, great apprentice. Yes, master. Tuanzi hurriedly agreed, then thought of something and said hurriedly, It's been 3 days and that Lao Sha hasn't come back yet. He must have run away. Master, you are obviously the boss, yet you still run away. You really don't keep your promises, guy. Cheng Cheng turned around and said with a smile, Don't worry, let Lao Sha run for a while first. 3 days later, at noon. On the balcony of Cayenne, the scorching sun hung in the sky, and the floor of the balcony was scalding hot. Tuanzi was wielding the Interpreter and the Dark Chaser and was swinging his sword like a madman. His whole body was soaked with sweat and dried by the hot sun several times. Behind Tuanzi, there was a blue dragon slaying knife suspended quietly. Cheng Cheng crossed his legs and sat under the umbrella, drinking listlessly. His eyes were staring at the water of life in the great holy grail in front of him, and from time to time he glanced at the fantasy beast spirit tree beside him. He let out a long sigh. Trees don't grow. Water doesn't rise. My drinking capacity is increasing day by day. Sad. Advertisement. Through these 6 days of observation, Cheng Cheng finally discovered that if Ace had to rely on the phantom beast spirit tree to grow naturally, the grass on Ace's future graves would probably be several feet tall. But the key is that there is still no movement in the water of life in the great holy grail. Ever since he was inexplicably discovered by the people while walking on a somersault cloud 3 days ago, the water has never risen again. Have you all forgotten your national teacher? Wish Li, I want Wan Li. After Cheng Cheng sighed, he raised his head and drank the rum in one gulp, dropped the glass heavily, and said angrily, Bah, even wine, there is nothing good in this world. As soon as he finished speaking, Cheng Cheng suddenly froze, slapped his forehead hard, and made a complete compliment to what he had just said. Only the Empress is okay. Tuanzi didn't seem to hear Cheng Cheng's words at all. The black and white swords just kept flying. Creak. There was a slight sound, and the wooden door of the balcony was slowly pushed open. Hans, the thin deputy store manager, carefully pushed the gate of opening, walked over, and said softly, Master Imperial Master, here comes a man named Kosha looking for you, and he also brings a dozen or so people who look very good. The evil person said he wanted to apply for a job at Cayenne. Let's go. Take me down. Cheng Cheng stood up directly, finally having something to be happy about. After arriving at the Cayenne Hall, the first floor was a spacious and splendid casino. Cheng Cheng was astonished by its level of luxury. Even the cracks in the bricks on the floor were filled with gold threads. As a person who has been influenced by modern aesthetics, Cheng Cheng despised the decoration style here when he arrived on the first day. However, he was relieved when he thought that the previous owner of this place was the upstart crocodile. Can this incompetent guy know what it means to be strong? The southernmost part of the hall is a large reception room, where Kosha and the others are waiting. Cheng Cheng walked in front, while Hans followed Cheng Cheng obediently. When he reached the door of the living room, Hans quickly stepped forward and opened the glass door. When Cheng Cheng walked in, he saw a scene that made him dumbfounded. Except for Kosha, who was sitting upright, everyone else was carefully looking at the layout of the living room. Shuya took out a rusty dagger and was concentrating on prying the ruby embedded in the pillar. When Kosha saw Cheng Cheng coming, he immediately started coughing hard. Cough cough cough. Chapter 77 The First Meeting of Cayenne. After Cheng Cheng walked into the living room, he looked at Kabaz, Shuya and the others with a smile. He just stood there and didn't bother them. Cough, cough, cough. Kosa saw that these people didn't react at all, and his coughing became more violent. Cough, cough, cough. Shuya finally tried her best to pry off the other sapphire with a dagger. She held the sapphire in front of her eyes with two slender fingers and looked at it carefully through the brilliant lights in the hall. She wanted to see if she had scratched the sapphire with such force just now, and whether it had caused any damage to the sapphire. Kabasi was opening his mouth to bite the gold ingot in the hand of a general sculpture. He didn't want to bite off the gold ingot and take it away, he just wanted to simply verify whether it was made of gold. Then he heard Kosha's violent coughing and couldn't help but look back. Ah! Kabasi screamed in shock, and bit the gold ingot in his mouth. Shuya and others were finally frightened by the shout, and subconsciously looked at the door. Ah! Ha! Ha! Oh! Ah! For a moment, there were endless sounds of surprise in the living room. Shuya and the others stood up straight in an instant and looked at the Imperial Master at the door with awkward expressions. Kosha finally stopped coughing, lowered his head, and touched his forehead with one hand, as if he was a little dizzy. It's okay, this will be your home from now on, whatever you want is fine. Cheng Cheng sat down first with a smile, waved his hands to signal for them to sit down too, and said kindly with a smile on his face. Actually, you may not believe it, but I really don't like the current Cayenne decoration style, it's too vulgar. When I entered the hall, I saw gold, yellow, and red everywhere, which is not good for the eyes. Shuya, what you did is very good. I really don't like those gems at all, they're too dazzling. Shuya and Kabasi obviously misunderstood Cheng Cheng, they lowered their heads and said nothing in shame. Master Imperial Master, please stop finding steps for them. Advertisement Kosha smiled bitterly and said, we are children who grew up in the slums. We have never seen so many precious things. This makes the National Preceptor laugh. We will definitely let them restore this place to its original state soon. Look, I still don't believe it when I tell the truth. Cheng Cheng shook his head and said with a smile, and then he said to Hans who was standing straight at the door. First go and find a set of our employee uniforms for each of them. From now on, they will all be employees of our Cayenne. By the way, his name is Kosha, and he will be Cayenne's manager from now on. Yes. Master Imperial Master, I'll go get ready right now. Hans agreed and walked backwards out the door, closing the door gently. Cheng Cheng sat at the head seat of the long table, while Kosha and the others sat casually around the long table. He glanced at Kosha and the others and asked with a smile, do you have any more questions? We have become employees of Cayenne, what do we need to do after that? A man with a plump, short and sharp voice asked. Cheng Cheng had already planned this in his mind and said slowly, the 6th floor of Cayenne is the training ground. You have only one mission, which is to make yourself stronger. Whoever doesn't want to train one day can just go to the 1st floor. If you walk around the casino and see someone causing trouble or cheating, throw them out. Of course, if you feel that the training ground is too small, you can go out to train. You are always free. In that case, we are Cayenne's thugs? Shuya asked doubtfully. Cheng Cheng nodded, it can be understood this way. After a while, I will let you eat the devil fruits you promised before based on your strength ranking. Because the cultivation of devil fruit is still very slow right now, the only one among you who is stronger will eat it first. I have told you this before in Yuba. Kosha and the others all nodded to express their understanding of this matter. In addition, you all know that I am also Alabasta's national advisor, so it is also your responsibility and obligation to make the people of this country live a happier life. Usually go out for a walk and see if there is anything you can do to help the people, then help. Cheng Cheng said to everyone with a sincere face. For a moment, Kosha and Shuya looked at Cheng Cheng with admiration. They looked at each other, and then nodded heavily at the same time and said, it is a blessing for all people to have a national master in Alabasta.
Don't say that, fame and fortune are just like clouds to me.
Cheng Cheng shook his head and waved his hands, smiled and rejected their argument, and then said, from today on, you are the official employees of Cayenne, and Cayenne's first all-employee representative meeting begins now.
Master National Preceptor, aren't the deputy store manager Hans who went out just now, and the others outside, also employees of Cayenne? Kabasi asked doubtfully, scratching his head. Advertisement. Cheng Cheng chuckled, they are all non-staff members. The 12 of you are members of Kosa's first team. Only those who are within the establishment can eat devil fruits.
Kabaz said, "Oh," and stopped talking. He sat quietly and looked at Cheng Cheng. He had already spit out the gold ingot in his mouth and placed it neatly on the table. After waiting quietly for a while, I found that everyone had no problem.
Cheng Cheng then said, "Our meeting has only one theme, and that is how to better help the people, so that all the people in Alabasta can live a happy life, and at the same time, they will love and support us." Quote.
It's a bullshit notion that we do good deeds without leaving our names behind. If we don't do it, if we do good deeds, we must let them know that it was our Cayenne employees who did it. For Kosha and Shuya, poor people who were born in the slums, the good and evil of human nature are the easiest to feel, and these are the things they have been most sensitive to since childhood.
After Cheng Cheng's last words came out, they truly believed Cheng Cheng and understood that the Imperial Master definitely wanted to help the people wholeheartedly.
Shuya was the first to speak. Those rich people are very happy. We don't need to worry about them. We can first help the poor, especially the people in the slums, by sending food and clothes. These are what they lack most. We can help them build houses. Many of the houses they live in have very bad conditions and will be extremely cold at night. Give them meat every day. Let's pick up trash and protect the environment. When I saw the woman crying, I went to comfort her. Donate, give them money, promote good and eliminate evil. They were talking more and more excitedly, but Cheng Cheng's brows were getting tighter and tighter. They felt that they were all unreliable and most of them were not long-term solutions. Forget it, I'd better invite Lao Sha back first, this is the real smart man. Kusha, you go to the 5th floor to have a meal first and change into our employee uniforms. We will continue the meeting in the afternoon. After Cheng Cheng finished speaking, he left the living room and went straight to the balcony on the top floor. After arriving on the balcony, he looked at the 3 golden lines on the back of his hand and raised the corners of his mouth. Lao Sha, 7 days have passed and I don't know where you have fled to? Chapter 78 Lao Sha returns somewhere on the empty island. The white clouds are floating, the vegetation is lush, and there is no impurity in the air. It is like a fairyland. Especially the air with the fragrance of vegetation here is intoxicating. The green grass that had just sprouted was swaying freely in the wind. Suddenly, it was trampled heavily on the ground by a big foot, and it sank deeply into the soil along with the footprints. It struggled hard, but the footprints were too deep, and the surrounding soil wrapped its body, making its struggle useless. Lao Sha kept running as hard as he could, with a look of horror in his eyes. He was in a state of utter disarray. His original mink fur coat had long been torn to pieces by lightning and had been thrown away long ago. Now the gray shirt he was wearing was also torn all over by lightning, and his original appearance could no longer be seen. Only a few rags were left hanging on the clothes. Lao Sha's head was split open and his face was dark. Which beast is attacking me in secret? Lao Sha was thinking quickly in his mind while running as hard as he could. You be ********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** Crocodile yelled and cursed loudly into the forest where there was no one in front of him. His figure seemed to be running aimlessly, but he had already secretly locked onto the man's aura and was approaching him step by step. He looked embarrassed, but in fact he was not seriously injured. He believed that as long as he saw the person who secretly released the thunder and lightning, he could kill him and then occupy the entire Sky Island to make a comeback. For some reason, at this moment, he suddenly thought of Cheng Cheng, the man who easily chopped off one of his arms with a casual sword. Compared to that terrifying sword, the damage caused by this thunder is really nothing. When he thought of the white-haired young man, a chill ran through his body. Boom! A thick blue thunderbolt crashed down on top of his head from the 9 heavens, impartially. Crocodile's whole body suddenly twitched, a burst of brilliant sparks burst out from his body, and black smoke slowly rose from the top of his head. Son of a b******ch, I'll kill you, Crocodile roared angrily, and accelerated his body again to shoot out. Not far away, he could now clearly feel that the person hiding in the dark was nearby. After a few breaths, Crocodile's figure had appeared thousands of meters away. Advertisement. After bypassing a giant tree, Crocodile suddenly stared ahead, narrowed his eyes and sneered. I finally found you. I saw a tall, bare-chested man in front of me. He wore a white turban on his head and his earlobes were particularly long. The man yawned lazily and sat on the chair, picking his ears casually with one hand, as if he had not seen Crocodile. Crocodile saw such a contemptuous look in his eyes, which seemed to be a provocation to himself, and he suddenly became even more angry. The only remaining hand instantly turned into sand, condensing a large amount of yellow sand. When he stepped hard, the entire ground within 10 meters collapsed instantly, turning into a pool of yellow sand. He suddenly waved his hand and chopped it down with force. Desert Sword. The sharp blade formed by the yellow sand cut through the air, tore up the ground and slashed towards the long-eared man. Huh, I see. Crocodile's voice stopped abruptly before he finished speaking. He instantly felt an irresistible force, as if his body no longer belonged to him at this moment. The surrounding space shattered like a mirror, revealing a black vortex. In the blink of an eye, Crocodile was sucked into the black vortex. At this moment, the huge yellow sand blade had flown in front of the long-eared man, but as Crocodile disappeared, the huge blade also lost its power in an instant, dissipated suddenly, and turned into a pile of yellow sand and fell to the ground. The long-eared man who had been sitting lazily on the chair finally changed his expression slightly and murmured, It's interesting. Above the rooftop of Cayenne, above Banana Crocodile's head, a tiny black crack quietly appeared in the air, and then the black crack expanded rapidly like a spider web. Finally, the space shattered like a mirror, and a black vortex appeared. Ah! A tragic scream came from the black vortex and resounded throughout the rooftop. Cheng Cheng stared at the black vortex with wide eyes and curiosity. Even Tuanzi stopped swinging his sword like a demon and stared at the black vortex with a world-destroying aura. The screams grew louder and louder. The next moment Crocodile's figure was violently thrown out of the black whirlpool, and his figure hit the banana crocodile's head heavily, making a dull sound. Crocodile stood up while rubbing his sore head and cursed angrily, "Big-eared thief, just wait for me." Then he looked at his surroundings, and his brows furrowed more and more. Here and there. Why do I feel familiar? Hello, Lao Sha. We haven't seen you for a few days. Where are you traveling? Cheng Cheng greeted Crocodile happily. After Crocodile heard the familiar voice, he turned his head mechanically. When he saw Cheng Cheng's familiar smile, he rubbed his eyes in disbelief, raised his hand and slapped himself. Advertisement, wake up, this is an illusion. Cheng Cheng smiled and slowly held the Zhenhai sword in his hand. Lao Sha, are you okay? What a fool. Lao Sha looked at Cheng Cheng like crazy, finally confirmed that it was not an illusion, and praised him loudly. Then he seemed to have lost his soul and sat slumped on the ground. Silently lighting up the last cigar, he inhaled hard and exhaled a mouthful of white smoke. Kill me, I won't live anymore. Is this starting to go bad? Where is the ambitious and domineering Lao Sha I know? Cheng Cheng smiled helplessly and put the Zhenhai sword on the table. Laozi doesn't want to play anymore, just do whatever you want. Perverts like you are not human at all. You are so strong, why don't you become one piece? Lao Sha took another deep breath of the cigar and suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. Irritated, he threw his cigar down the rooftop and continued. My entire arm was chopped off by your sword. My arm is now useless. Come on, chop my neck with your sword. Cheng Cheng smiled and said earnestly, Lao Sha, I want to say that I can restore your arm so that you can have the same strength as General Marine in the future. Do you believe it? Lao Sha stood up suddenly, a ray of light burst out from his eyes, and said without hesitation, Believe it? You can make me come here from the empty island in an instant. Why don't I believe it? Even if you say Mauricio the Tianlong people have to kowtow and call you ancestors when they see you, and IF asterisk 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 G believe it today. What a spirit! Cheng Cheng extended his thumb and praised, then he looked down at the two golden lines left on the back of his hand and said loudly, With my order, restore Lao Sha's arm. At the same time, the golden lines on the back of Lao Sha's hand also shone with golden light. The golden lines flying out from Cheng Cheng's arm and the golden lines on the back of Lao Sha's hand flew out at the same time, colliding in the air. There was a burst of divine light, then the sacred light rushed toward Crocodile's broken arm. For a moment, in Crocodile's shocked eyes, he watched his broken arm grow inch by inch. First, white bones were born, and then muscles, blood, meridians, skin, and hair were continuously intertwined and intertwined. After a few breaths, Lao Sha's originally severed arm grew back, and it was whiter and tenderer than before. Crocodile moved his fingers tentatively, looking shocked. Thump. After a dull sound, Crocodile, who was once one of the Shichibukai, knelt down in the direction of Cheng Cheng without hesitation and made a deep sound. From now on, I will obey my orders. Chapter 79 Happy People. Cheng Cheng looked at Lao Sha who was kneeling in front of him and said indifferently, Lao Sha, I know you are a very ambitious person, but please believe that you will never imagine how big my ambition is, Cheng Cheng. As long as you follow me honestly, you will find how small your previous ambitions were. In addition, in the contract you signed with me, I have a total of 3 opportunities to force you to order you. Now I have consumed 2 command spells. When I need to use the last command spell, you will explode and die. At this time, Lao Sha also stood up, looked directly at Cheng Cheng and said, You're the most incredible person I have ever seen. You give me a scarier feeling than Whitebeard. I can follow a person like you. Sha has nothing to be ashamed of. And I want to make it clear that I am willing to follow you, not because I am afraid of death. I just want to see what heights a person like you can reach in the end. And I also want to know how powerful you are. Marine headquarters and the people in world government, do they know? If they knew you existed, how would you respond? Lao Sha asked in a deep voice, staring into Cheng Cheng's eyes. Cheng Cheng smiled and said, I am a good citizen, why should the Marine government deal with me? Of course, if they really cause trouble for me, even if they are Tianlong people, I will not mind killing them one by one. Lao Sha suddenly took a breath of cold air, with a look of horror in his eyes. Let's go. Since you have expressed your sincerity, let's go down and have a meeting together. After Cheng Cheng said this, he then said to Tuanzi, Don't practice Tuanzi. Please pause for a while. The first Cayenne all-staff meeting is very important. Let's try our best not to miss it. Oh, Tuanzi agreed, put away the interpreter and the dark chaser and straddled his waist. The dragon-slaying knife suspended behind him also fell down, and straddled the side of his waist with the other black and white swords. Then she saw Lao Sha's unkind face, and then she looked at Lao Sha fiercely and made a gesture of drawing the knife at him. Lao Sha, on the other hand, watched with eyes, nose, and heart, as if he didn't see anything. He just followed Cheng Cheng silently down the balcony, while still thinking about what the Cayenne staff meeting was. After walking down the hall on the first floor, Cheng Cheng saw Hans waiting respectfully at the door of the living room from a distance. He smiled slightly. This Hans was an old guy with a sophisticated personality. Advertisement. After arriving at the door of the reception room, Hans hurriedly moved his hands to the gate of opening. Master Imperial Master, they have changed into their staff uniforms and are all inside. I know, you don't have anything to do here, so go ahead and do your work when you need to. After Cheng Cheng nodded, he slowly walked into the living room. When Cheng Cheng saw the uniforms of Kosha and his employees, he immediately beamed and was in a good mood. At this moment, Kusha and the others all put on black suits and wore shiny leather shoes. Especially after Shuya put on this black suit, her whole aura completely changed, her chest was tight, and she actually showed a faint hint of murderous intent. In addition, Kosha has a black cloak on his back with a large white character printed on it, Cheng. Well, these clothes are good. As expected, people rely on clothes, and Buddha relies on gold. After you put on this suit, your temperament will change instantly, Cheng Cheng said with a smile on his face as he scanned the crowd. Kosha hesitated and asked, Master Imperial Master, I wonder what the word, honesty, on the back of my cloak means. Treat people with integrity and serve the country and the people. This is our purpose. It is written on the back of your cloak to remind you never to forget it. Cheng Cheng smiled and explained patiently. At the same time, in order to distinguish it from other employees, this cloak can only be worn by the captain. Understood, Master Imperial Master. Kusha nodded heavily, his expression full of pride. Shuya asked softly with a rosy face at the side. Master Imperial Master, my clothes are a bit too small, can you change them to a larger size? Can't. Cheng Cheng immediately refused righteously, then changed the subject and said seriously, now our first Cayenne all-staff meeting will continue to be held. The theme of our meeting is only one, and that is how to make the people happy. They have also talked about their own plans before. Lao Sha, do you have any better suggestions? At this moment, Lao Sha had also put on the black robe with large white characters again, his entire face was hidden in the hood, and he was wearing sunglasses. Advertisement Ko Sha and the others couldn't see clearly what Lao Sha looked like. Cheng Cheng saw everyone's confusion and explained, this is Lao Sha, the captain of the 2nd Division. Lao Sofa, who was hidden under the hood, let out a disdainful laugh. I guess your plan is just to build houses for the poor, give food and drink, give money and other boring things, right? Kosha and Shuya both nodded and asked doubtfully, is there anything wrong with this? What a big mistake. Lao Sha said coldly, no matter how much you give them, these stupid people will never be satisfied. If you give them each 100 belly today, tomorrow they will expect to get 200s of baileys and more. If you give them less money the day after tomorrow, or no more money, then you will be the biggest enemy in the eyes of those ignorant people. Human desires are endless. Human nature is greedy. Kosha squinted his eyes, pushed up his glasses slightly with his fingers, and asked, then may I ask the 2nd captain, do you have any clever plan? The method is very simple, but those of you who are accustomed to standing on a high moral level will never do it. It's all in vain. Lao Sha lit a cigar, leaned against the wall and took a puff and said slowly. You bad guy, you must not be holding anything back, Tuanzi said angrily as he gripped the handle of the Dragon Slayer knife. Cheng Cheng nodded in agreement, but still said, it's okay, if you have any ideas, just say them. I don't have to adopt them, but you must speak freely. Lao Sha slowly exhaled a puff of white smoke and sneered. As long as half of the people in Alabasta are killed, and the remaining half, I guarantee that they will live in happiness for the rest of their lives. As soon as the words fell, the entire conference hall fell into silence, and you could hear a pin drop. The air was filled with a depressing atmosphere. Everyone looked at me, with surprise in everyone's eyes. Ko Sha raised his head and stared at Lao Sha with sharp eyes. He clenched his fists tightly, and the veins on his arms popped out like earthworms. Because he exerted too much force, his arms began to tremble uncontrollably. Tuanzi's momentum suddenly surged at the side. He drew out the blue dragon-slaying knife and stepped out. The stone slabs on the ground instantly shattered. A blue sword light was like a full moon, and it slashed towards Lao Sha. I'll chop you to death. You be asterisk 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 D. Chapter 80 Recruiting troops to do big things. The blue sword light slashed away. When it was about to touch Lao Sha's body, Lao Sha's figure dispersed and turned into a ball of yellow sand. After a few steps, his figure condensed again. Tuanzi's sword failed, so he had to charge forward again and strike a second time. Cheng Cheng hurriedly rushed over, hugged Tuanzi's waist with both hands, lifted her whole body in the air and stopped her, and said hurriedly, Tuanzi, calm down. When Kosha and the others saw that the man in black named Lao Sha turned into sand and had the same ability as Crocodile, they all stood up suddenly and looked at Lao Sha warily. It's okay, it's okay. Lao Sha and Crocodile are not the same person. What he eats is soil fruit. It looks similar to Crocodile's Shasha fruit, but it's actually different. Cheng Cheng smiled and said, everyone explained. Ko Sha and the others took a long breath and sat down again, but the eyes they looked at Lao Sha were still a little weird. Look, I know that even if I were told a plan, you pedantic people wouldn't adopt it. Lao Sha calmly smoked a cigarette and said slowly. At the same time, he turned to look at Tuanzi. Under his sunglasses, no one saw the look in his eyes. Tuanzi looked at him fiercely and cursed. What are you looking at? If you dare to kill one of my master's people, I will chop you to death. Cheng Cheng also cursed secretly in his heart. Lousy, my willpower can increase quickly only by having more people. Good guy, you are good. Just poke my lifeblood when you come up. Then he said earnestly, although your plan may make the remaining people happy, it is too extreme. Lao Sha, you have no friends or relatives before, so I don't blame you for saying such things, you. But have you ever thought about whether any of the people you killed were couples who had been in love for more than 10 years? Were they childhood sweethearts? Did you regard your brother's life as more important than your own? I can guarantee you that if you kill them, the one who lives alone will never be happy in this life. After hearing Cheng Cheng's words, Kosha's expression calmed down a bit, and he gritted his teeth and said, if you base your happiness on the death of other people, then don't do it. Cheng Cheng looked at the tense atmosphere in the conference hall and said in a calm tone, today is the first meeting. I also want to tell you the iron rule of our Cayenne. Employees can fight and discuss among themselves, but they cannot kill. If anyone violates this rule, don't blame me for being rude. Advertisement. Everyone nodded heavily, obviously no one had any objections to this point. Then Cheng Cheng lowered his head and fell into deep thought. The conference hall fell into silence again, and the cheers of the crowd at the gaming table outside could be heard faintly. Cheng Cheng put the bowl on the table, tapped his index finger lightly on the table, made a crisp sound, and said suddenly, well, in addition to Lao Sha's plan, I have comprehensively considered the suggestions from the rest of you. Let's conduct a tree planting activity with a time limit of 1 month to conduct an experiment and see what the effect is. Everyone looked at Cheng Cheng with doubts on their faces. Cheng Cheng stood up from his chair and said excitedly, the specifics are like this. We mobilize the people to plant trees, let them come and receive saplings for free, and then use these saplings to plant trees in Yuba. As long as the planting is successful, they can come. We have received a bounty of 10,000 belly here, and all the people of Alabasta can participate as long as they are willing. This event is good, but where does the money come from? I'm sure that for such a hugely profitable event, the number of people participating will be unimaginable. Kosha asked with a solemn expression. Cheng Cheng chuckled, looked at Lao Sha, waved his hand and said, Cayenne has accumulated a lot of wealth over the years. For this event, we will first use 800 million belly. The event will last for a month or until the 800 million belly is used up. At this time, everyone had smiles on their faces, and the atmosphere in the conference hall became a little more relaxed at this moment. Lao Sha, who was leaning against the wall, still showed no expression and was smoking his cigar silently. Shuya asked hesitantly, can we restrict it so that only poor people can participate in this activity? Otherwise, the rich will definitely not let go of this opportunity to make money. Before Cheng Cheng could speak, Kosha smiled and explained for Cheng Cheng, how could it be? Those rich people would never lower themselves for a mere 10,000 belly. The bonus set by the Imperial Master is neither high nor low, and the size is just right. This amount of money is a timely help for the poor, but for the rich, it may only be the price of a cup of afternoon tea. Master Imperial Master is indeed far-sighted. After Shuya understood the truth, she sincerely praised Cheng Cheng. Cheng Cheng saw Kosha's smile getting stronger and stronger, nodded to Kosha, and thought to himself, you are really smart. Advertisement snapped. A clear voice resounded in the conference hall. Cheng Cheng slapped the table with a serious face. In that case, Kosha, you will be responsible for this matter. Let's start implementing it as soon as possible. Okay. Cayenne's first all-staff meeting has concluded successfully. There will definitely be many more meetings like this in the future, and I believe that more and more people will attend the meeting. As the first batch of people attending the meeting, you should realize that this is a great thing. Bang bang bang. Suddenly Tuanzi took the lead in applauding excitedly, and the others followed suit with smiles on their faces. After Ko Sha and the others left, only Cheng Cheng, Tuanzi and Lao Sha were left in the conference hall. What should I do next? You won't let me plant trees, right? Lao Sha asked slowly. Cheng Cheng had already made arrangements in his mind for Lao Sha, and said, Lao Sha, your current task is to first bring back all the original members of your Baroque working society. If you don't want to come back, don't force them. In addition, Robin, you don't need to worry about her, she is with my brother Luffy now. Besides these, what I lack now is people with great perseverance and ambition. It doesn't matter how strong these people are now. I don't care where you go to find them, and I don't care what their identity is. It doesn't matter if they are pirates or marines. There is no age limit. Within a month, you can gather 30 people for me. These people will be members of your second division in the future. Lao Sha took off his sunglasses and showed a sharp gaze, asking, what do you want these people to do? Cheng Cheng's expression was cold, golden light flashed in his narrow eyes, and he said indifferently, if necessary, kill Marine's headquarters, Marine Fando. Lao Sha was stunned for a moment, then he laughed wildly with joy, ah ha 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 ha. Chapter 81 Appearances of all living beings. The next morning, the coolness of the night had not dissipated. At this usual time, there are basically no people at the entrance of Cayenne, and the business of the casino is basically only afternoon, when customers slowly start to arrive, and then in the evening, it is the busiest time. But today is a little different. More and more ordinary people gathered at the entrance of Cayenne, pointing at the notices posted on the wall. Beside the notice, there were piles of saplings as big as a hill. Everyone who is passing by, come and take a look. The limited event of planting trees with prizes only lasts for 1 month. First come, first served. You will share 800 million Baileys in 1 month. It's up to you how much you can take away. Shuya, wearing a black suit, introduced loudly in front of everyone. Brothers and sisters, the organizer of this event is the National Master. I absolutely guarantee the truth. Kabasi also shouted with all his strength. As for the other members of the first team, they went to various cities across the country to promote this event. Kosha even went directly to Yuba and waited there. The onlookers pointed and talked, but no one came forward to sign up to receive the saplings. Is this event real? Little girl, if you really follow what you said, As long as you get the saplings and plant the trees in Yuba, you can get 10,000 belly. Isn't this similar to giving money? Is there such a good thing in the world? Yes, I think so. Even the Imperial Master would not do such a thing for no reason, right? Shuya initially thought that this event would be very popular, but she never expected that so many people would question it. He had explained it so many times this morning that it was true, and his throat was hoarse, and no one wanted to believe her. She could only patiently continue to explain to everyone in kind words. The Imperial Master is not thinking about helping you poor people who have no money, so he wants to give you such a good welfare activity, and it doesn't cost you any money from beginning to end. Money? What are you still worried about? The notice says that if you plant a tree successfully, you have to wait until the tree grows into a towering tree before you can receive the bonus, right? Someone in the front row of the onlookers asked. Shuya explained. Of course not. As long as you plant it carefully and survive smoothly, I guarantee that you will get the bonus of 10,000 baileys soon. Can I plant 10 saplings at once? Someone asked again.
Shuya shook her head again and said, no, everything must be done according to the activity. You can only plant one at a time, but there is no limit on the number of times you sign up. That means that after you successfully plant one, you can plant more.
There were more and more people watching in front of Cayenne, but everyone was looking at each other, but no one was willing to come forward to sign up. Advertisement Cheng Cheng was standing on the rooftop looking at the crowd below with a calm expression. Master, why are you not willing to participate in a good thing that is obviously to give him money? Are there no poor people in this city of Yudi? Tuanzi asked doubtfully. No, there are always poor people in any city. Even the royal city of Alabasta only looks bright and beautiful on the surface. Cheng Cheng shook his head slightly and said, their unwillingness to sign up is not because they are not short of money, but because they are waiting, and no one wants to be the first person. What's wrong with being first? They didn't lose anything. Tuanzi still looked confused.
Cheng Cheng chuckled lightly, looked up at the distant sky where the sun had risen, and murmured, there is no right or wrong here, it's just human nature.
Then he shouted to the sky, somersault cloud. After Tuanzi heard her master calling the somersault cloud, she immediately looked up at the sky and guessed where it would fly from this time. This has become a little habit of hers. But this time, after waiting for a long time, I didn't see the golden figure of the somersault cloud. Tuanzi looked at Cheng Cheng with confusion, and Cheng Cheng was even more confused. Although somersault cloud used to be late for a while, are you late for a long time today? Is something wrong with it? Tuanzi asked worriedly. Cheng Cheng closed his eyes and felt the mysterious connection between him and somersault cloud. He shook his head slightly and said, probably not. Maybe it stayed up late yesterday. Forget it, just ignore it.
Immediately, Cheng Cheng stepped on the moonwalk and walked straight out of the rooftop, just like walking up the stairs, slowly walking down from the sky. When he was still about 10 meters from the ground, Cheng Cheng was suspended in the air and said loudly with no expression on his face.
Shuya, from now on, the planting activity period will be reduced to 15 days, and the bonus will be 600 million belly.
After finishing speaking, Cheng Cheng didn't look at everyone's reaction. He tapped his toes and flew towards the rooftop again.
Ah? Shuya looked at Cheng Cheng's leaving figure in confusion, with a bitter look on her face. My throat was dry after all the hard work of persuading her, and no one had signed up for the 800 million prize. You'd be better off, just cut it off by 200 million in one sentence. Wouldn't that mean that no one would sign up? However, something unexpected happened to Shuya at the next moment. She found that the crowd of people watching gradually became quiet, and their eyes also changed in some way, with a little more excitement. Advertisement, I want to sign up. Among the crowd, a plainly dressed middle-aged man spoke up first and came to Shuya.
In an instant, the crowd became lively and noisy again.
I want to sign up too. Count me in, and me, and me. Everyone was crowded and moved forward, fearing that all the seats would be taken away.
The table in front of Shuya was shaken by the crowd. She looked at the sudden change in front of her in astonishment. She really couldn't figure out why.
With an angry look on her face, she pulled out the long sword from her waist and slashed forward suddenly. The long sword broke through the wind and let out a soft cry, and the table in front of her was instantly cut in half.
Everyone, please line up for me. Shuya glanced at everyone with anger and said one after another.
The crowd fell silent again instantly. The person in front swallowed silently and took a step back. Soon, the chaotic crowd formed two lines of several hundred meters. Kabasi moved a table out of the Cayenne Hall and filled in the registration forms for everyone with a simple and honest smile. Cheng Cheng, who returned to the revolving heaven stage, suddenly felt something in his heart. He hurriedly took out the great holy grail and saw that the water of life inside was rising at an extremely slow speed. Although it seems slow, it is much better than before. It seems this activity has already had an effect. Cheng Cheng raised the corners of his mouth and showed a satisfied smile. Now he has begun to look forward to how much more water of life can be added when the large-scale activities really begin. Master, look over there. Tuanzi suddenly pointed to the sky in the distance and said with a smile. Cheng Cheng looked in the direction Tuanzi pointed, a little surprised. In the blue sky, a group of golden clouds and a group of white clouds flew past one after another. Chapter 82. You still have to have money as the two clouds, one golden and one white, got closer and closer. Cheng Cheng gradually saw the white clouds clearly. On Bai Yunduo's head, he even wore a red and white yellow peaked cap. Is this Zeus? The moment Cheng Cheng saw this hat, he remembered that the white cloud looked like the thundercloud Zeus beside Charlotte Linlin. How did they hook up? In the blink of an eye, Somersault Cloud and Zeus flew in front of Cheng Cheng. This time, Cheng Cheng did not ride on Somersault Cloud. Somersault Cloud slowly floated over, leaning close to Cheng Cheng's side and rubbing Cheng Cheng's thigh. The white clouds were suspended peacefully in the air, swaying gently with the breeze. Cheng Cheng stared at the white cloud carefully and shouted sternly, "Zeus, don't pretend to be asleep, I know you." The white clouds did not move at all. With lightning speed, Cheng Cheng quickly reached out and took off the yellow peaked cap from Zeus's head, then placed his hand on top of Somersault Cloud's head. "No, no, my hat!" Zeus exclaimed and hurriedly opened his eyes, revealing a carefree and lazy expression above the white clouds. Cheng Cheng twirled his hat in his hand and said, "Then I just called you and you still didn't agree? That's what my eldest sister specifically told me not to let me talk to you." Zeus turned to look at the Somersault Cloud and said with an aggrieved look. The Somersault Cloud surged rapidly, and the golden cloud turned into a big hand and slapped Zeus hard. A piece of the white cloud on Zeus was instantly scattered. "Sister, I was wrong, don't be angry." Zeus hurriedly begged for mercy, showing a flattering expression. Cheng Cheng stared at Somersault Cloud with wide eyes and said in surprise, "You turn out to be a girl?" Then he gently touched Somersault Cloud, and Somersault Cloud calmed down. "Don't bully Zeus, he is still a very good yun." "Brother Cheng Cheng, you are such a good person." Zeus burst into tears and said movedly. Advertisement. At this time, Tuanzi also came over and touched Zeus with interest. Zeus did not refuse, with a look of enjoyment on his face. Cheng Cheng continued to ask with interest, "Why doesn't Somersault Cloud let you talk to me?" Zeus glanced at the surging Somersault Cloud next to him and did not dare to speak. Then Cheng Cheng said softly to Somersault Cloud, "Let Zeus talk, don't scare him. My eldest sister told me when I came here, she said she couldn't even speak. If you see me, a talking cloud, you will think she is a stupid cloud." Zeus explained in a low voice. After hearing this, Cheng Cheng laughed happily and patted Somersault Cloud gently. "How could you be stupid, yun? Your Somersault Cloud family has one greatest advantage, and that is speed. You may not know that there is a Somersault Cloud in your family. He is following a monkey. His speed is extremely fast, so your potential in the future is also endless. If my guess is correct, Zeus must not be able to fly as fast as you." Zeus nodded hurriedly. Yes, I have always envied my eldest sister for being able to fly so fast." The Somersault Cloud stopped surging and quietly calmed down. Cheng Cheng continued, "Don't worry, it's just a matter of speaking. After a while, I will go to Charlotte Linlin and ask her to open up your soul. You should be able to speak." After hearing this, the Somersault Cloud began to surge again, jumping up and down. "How do you know me?" Zeus asked doubtfully. Cheng Cheng chuckled, "You are so famous, Zeus, who doesn't know you in this world? Although I have never met you, I have heard your legends, and I also know that you like to eat thunderclouds, right? You are so powerful, you are worthy of being my eldest sister's master," Zeus said happily in surprise. Cheng Cheng continued to take a step forward in a low voice and said mysteriously, "I also know someone. She is my friend, she has endless thunderclouds. As long as you follow her from now on, I guarantee that you will eat thunderclouds every day. Also, I assure you, she is not only beautiful but also very gentle." Zeus kept smacking his mouth, saliva flowing out of his mouth, looking at Cheng Cheng with wide eyes, and asked hurriedly, "Who is she? Where is she? I'm going to find her now." Cheng Cheng raised the corners of his mouth slightly, raised his eyebrows slightly, and said to Zeus with a smile, "Her name is Nami. I can ask Somersault Cloud to take you to find her now. With Somersault Cloud's introduction, Nami will definitely give you a surprise, Cloud." Okay, let's go now," Zeus said hurriedly. "Let me calculate the time." After Cheng Cheng finished speaking, he thought silently in his mind for a while and said, "If nothing else happens, Nami and the others should be on the empty island now. If you can't find Nami and the others after you go there, just wait there, it should be arriving soon." Advertisement. Then the Somersault Cloud shook and flew straight up into the sky. Zeus shouted and followed hurriedly. "Master, why did you lie to Zeus to find Sister Nami? What use can he have if he looks so stupid?" Tuanzi asked in confusion. Cheng Cheng smiled and explained, "Don't look at his lazy look, this is just his softer side. Zeus contains the power of thunder. If there is a fight, it will be very powerful." Tuanzi let out a cry, then pulled out the interpreter and the dark chaser from his excited waist, and eagerly said, "Master, see if I can practice the starburst air current slash." "Good." Cheng Cheng smiled and nodded, casually sitting on the back of Banana Crocodile, looking at Tuanzi with peaceful eyes. The dragon-slaying knife was flowing quietly and vertically above her. In an instant, the sword energy was dense on the rooftop. 3 days later in the afternoon, people throughout Alabasta, both poor and rich, began to discuss one thing. That is the tree planting activity of the Imperial Master. Because people who are close to Juba have already received the bonus of 10,000 belly first, and then gradually, people in various cities across the country also received it. For a while, those who were still watching finally couldn't bear it anymore. There has been a wave of tree planting across the country. In front of Cayenne Gate, a group of people knelt there and worshipped. "Master National Preceptor, he is our savior. Master National Preceptor is such a good person. It is a blessing for all people to have a national master in Alabasta, and it is a blessing that we have cultivated for hundreds of years." Cheng Cheng was smiling and went straight to the chair under the umbrella to lie down. His eyes looked at the water of life in the great holy grail in front of him, which was rising at a speed visible to the naked eye. Cheng Cheng completely relaxed his waist and leaned his back against the back of the chair. He gently shook the wine in his hand and sighed, it still costs money. Chapter 83 Harvesting the First Phantom Beast Devil Fruit. Cheng Cheng stood up without any hesitation, picked up the great holy grail and poured it into the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree. Under the golden light emitted by the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree, the water of life also turned into a pale golden water mass, suspended in the roots of the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree and squirming up and down. In a few breaths, a whole glass of water of life was sucked up by the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree. The quiet and suspended Fantasy Beast Spirit Tree began to bloom with dazzling golden light beams in the next moment, soaring straight into the sky. The people of the entire Rainland looked up at the golden light over Cayenne at this moment, and were attracted by that sacred and dazzling golden light. A crying child in the rain saw the golden light and stopped crying instantly, blinking his big eyes and looking curiously at the golden light pillar. There was a middle-aged couple who were quarreling. When they saw the golden beam of light, they immediately calmed down and stopped quarreling. The people who knelt down in front of the Cayenne gate looked even more pious after seeing the pillar of light. Many people even bowed to the ground and lowered their body postures to the extreme. Cheng Cheng walked back and forth around the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree, looking at the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree that was constantly swaying and growing, with a happy smile on his face. The sapling, which was originally only half a meter tall, has now grown to over 1 meter tall after absorbing a glass of water of life, and the golden leaves on the tree have also become much denser. The tree trunk, which was as thin as a bamboo pole before, has now become several times thicker, and the golden roots under the tree have become denser. Dots of golden light like snowflakes continued to fall with the swaying of the Fantasy Beast Spirit Tree. Cheng Cheng took a closer look and suddenly found a slightly bulging golden bud at the top of the tree. Is it possible that it will bloom soon? His face instantly brightened, and he did not dare to touch the little flower bud with his hands. He just put his face very close to observe carefully. God pays off his hard work. Do you know how much energy I spent on you, a little thing? Now I finally see a little hope, and I will live up to my previous efforts for you. Cheng Cheng remembered the system's previous introduction to the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree. After it blooms, the Phantom Beast Devil Fruit will be condensed. Looking at the empty Great Holy Grail, although he could notice that the water in the Great Holy Grail was still condensing, but the speed was obviously slower than before. He looked down at the Great Holy Grail, narrowed his eyes, and fell into deep thought. Suddenly, Cheng Cheng tapped his toes and jumped into the sky. Stepping on moonwalk, he slowly walked out of the rooftop and appeared in front of everyone below. When the people below saw the national master dressed in black and white hair appearing, they all looked up at him respectfully. Advertisement. All the people were silent, seeming to be waiting for Cheng Cheng to speak. My country's master thinks of you sincerely. The activity time and bonus will remain unchanged. The original 800 million belly will be restored, and the activity time will be 1 month. Cheng Cheng looked peaceful and spoke calmly. His voice was not very loud, but it seemed to echo in everyone's ears. As soon as the words fell, the whole audience burst into shocking cheers. The people who had not knelt down to worship Cheng Cheng almost all knelt down and shouted in unison. Thank you, Master Imperial Master, and long blessings, Master Imperial Master. It is a blessing for Alabasta and for millions of poor people to have the national master here in Alabasta. From now on, before I eat every day, I have to thank the Imperial Master. Otherwise, the meal will not be delicious. Master National Master is my idol. After Cheng Cheng finished speaking, he stopped paying attention to what everyone said, stepped on the void, and slowly returned to the rooftop. Shuya and Kabasi, who were in charge of registering at the entrance of Cayenne, looked at each other. Kabasi looked at Cheng Cheng's disappearing figure and said with admiration, Master National Preceptor is such a good man. Shuya looked strange and murmured, haven't you noticed that after all this time, the bonus has not changed, but the people are more grateful to him? Kabasi lowered his head, frowned, pinched his fingers, and calculated silently. After a while, he suddenly said, it's true. Returning to the balcony, Cheng Cheng looked at the water of life that began to rise slowly in the Great Holy Grail. He smiled at the corner of his mouth, pointed his index finger at the Great Holy Grail, and muttered like a magic stick. Hurry up, faster. After playing by himself for a while and feeling bored, Cheng Cheng lay down under the umbrella, his whole body limp, drinking and staring at the golden Fantasy Beast Spirit Tree. He had an inexplicable feeling that as long as he stared at the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree, there would be an indescribable tranquility and relaxation deep in his heart. Suddenly an idea flashed, and Cheng Cheng said to Tuanzi, who was still swinging his sword wildly, Disciple, stop for a moment. Tuanzi, who was swinging his sword wildly like a hot wheel, immediately stopped, put away the interpreter and the dark chaser, and the dragon-slaying sword, which was constantly flying back and forth in the air, also stopped and fell into Tuanzi's hands. Tuanzi wiped the sweat from his forehead and said excitedly, Master, are you going to teach me new sword skills again? Cheng Cheng rolled his eyes and said angrily, Don't bite off more than you can chew. Your biggest problem now is that you are too obsessed with swordsmanship and neglected the way of swordsmanship. Oh, Master, what exactly is Kendo? Tuanzi asked with his eyes wide open. Kendo and swordsmanship must understand each other. Swordsmanship is only the external form of swordsmanship, and swordsmanship is the core thing. Cheng Cheng wanted to continue talking in depth, but seeing that Tuanzi was only an 8-year-old child, he changed his mind and said, Well, you should think more about how to use your sword faster when you kill Tianlong people in the future. Stronger. Advertisement, Master. Do you just rely on your brain to think? Tuanzi asked. Cheng Cheng smiled and said, yes, you can set aside 2 hours every day to sit under the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree and think carefully before you start practicing your sword. Master, but I still think that keeping swinging the sword like this will make it more powerful. As Tuanzi spoke, he pulled out the black and white swords and quickly waved them in the air. The black and white sword lights flashed, forming a circular trajectory of black and white sword lights. Cheng Cheng rubbed her head and said with a smile, practice without thinking will lead to failure, thinking without practicing will lead to peril. I understand, Master. Tuanzi felt Cheng Cheng's warm palm and nodded, not knowing whether he understood or not, so he agreed obediently. The Dragon Slayer, Interpreter and Dark Chaser were placed in front of her knees. After a while, there was a cyclone rolling around Tuanzi, and the branches and leaves of the Fantasy Beast Spirit Tree fluttered with it. Cheng Cheng looked at Tuanzi, who quickly entered the cultivation state under the tree and sighed in his heart. Probably only by saying this can I make you stop and rest for a while. Night. The moon was sparse and the temperature dropped a lot instantly. Cheng Cheng looked at the water of life in the Great Holy Grail and it was full again. Only then did he call Tuanzi up from under the tree. Tuanzi didn't know whether he fell asleep or something happened, so he asked in a daze, Master, do you think the Phantom Beast devil fruits on the tree are very powerful? That's not necessarily true. The common people among the Phantom Beasts are very ordinary, but I believe your luck won't be that bad. After Cheng Cheng answered with a smile, he tilted the Great Holy Grail slightly and the water of life instantly flowed out and dripped on the Fantasy Beast Spirit Tree. In an instant, the golden light flourished once again. The sky in the dark night was instantly illuminated by a powerful golden light, and the sky above the rooftop was also dyed golden. Cheng Cheng stared at the Fantasy Beast Spirit Tree intently. This time, the Fantasy Beast Spirit Tree did not grow taller, but the small golden bud on the treetop began to bloom slowly. The golden petals bloomed completely in the blink of an eye, and each petal had strange red lines. Then those red lines gradually condensed together, slowly forming a devil fruit with alternate golden and red patterns. There seems to be a flame burning inside the fruit. Chapter 84 Thunder Cheng Cheng reached out and approached the red and gold Phantom Beast devil fruit, and found that the temperature around it was rising rapidly. Suddenly a strong wind blew up, and Tuanzi's hair became messy. Above the clouds above Cayenne, blue electric light flashed faintly, and there were bursts of roaring sounds. Cheng Cheng raised his head and frowned at the thunder on the clouds, feeling a vague premonition in his heart. This damn weather, this heartless god, it's thundering even if it thunders. Tuanzi's whole body was messy in the wind, and he cursed at the sky. However, the wind was already strong at this moment, and the parasol on the rooftop was turned upside down, and the round wooden table was slowly slid forward by the wind. The branches and leaves on the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree were twisted rapidly by the strong wind, but not a single leaf fell down, and the golden and red devil fruit remained motionless in the strong wind. Above the clouds, the thunder is getting stronger and stronger now, forming a thunderpool, as if it has been brewing, just waiting for the final thunder blow. The bad premonition grew stronger in Cheng Cheng's heart, and his heart suddenly sank. Oh no! Isn't this G disaster? Tuanzi, stay away from here first. Cheng Cheng cursed angrily, and his whole body shape changed. He relaxed his shoulders, lowered his elbows and bent his knees. He took a very low stance. In an instant, his body was fully armed and domineering. All his limbs turned into pitch black, and the water flow formed by the breath of water lingered in the air. Hovering around. After he slowly put his hands together on his waist, his whole aura reached its peak at this moment. The aqua-blue energy ball suddenly bloomed between the hands, spinning and swaying at high speed. Circles of invisible ripples were shaken in the surrounding air, like a huge stone suddenly falling on the calm water. Tuanzi clenched the black and white swords with both hands, his eyes full of worry, and he stood stiffly staring at the master. Cheng Cheng no longer had the mind to take care of Tuanzi. He exerted force under his feet and the rooftop floor suddenly shattered. He pushed his hands into the air suddenly, armed color water breath turtle-style qigong wave. A column of aqua-blue energy light rose from the ground like a comet and crashed into the thunder above the clouds. A big hole was punched through the clouds in an instant, and the blue thunder also weakened a lot. Cheng Cheng looked slightly relaxed and breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that the turtle-style qigong waves were effective. But soon, the clouds in the sky closed again, and the thunder resumed, and the sound of rumbling was loud and powerful, even more fierce than before. Cheng Cheng's heart tightened. Not good, it looks like something big is going to happen. The thunder above the clouds erupted with a loud roar, and an extremely thick thunder struck down from the sky, as if it was going to destroy everything and burn the world. Somersault cloud! Cheng Cheng shouted loudly. This time he did not scold Tuanzi to leave. Instead, he flashed behind Tuanzi, grabbed her by the collar and threw her into the high air in the distance. Master, I won't leave, I want to stay with you. Tuanzi shouted loudly, but she could no longer control her body in the air and flew out as fast as a ball. Advertisement seeing a golden light flying rapidly in the distance, Cheng Cheng stopped looking at the dumplings. He randomly stuffed a handful of fairy beans into his mouth and held the Zhenhai sword tightly. The sword body turned from gray to black as it trembled, and the sharp sword energy was hesitating on the sword body. Cheng Cheng exerted force on the soles of his feet, and the ground suddenly collapsed. He raised the Zhenhai sword upside down and stood up from the ground. The sword energy suddenly surged against the wind, soaring 40 meters. Break it for me. Cheng Cheng roared angrily and slashed at the thick blue thunder with his huge sword energy. Boom! 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 A huge explosion resounded throughout the world. Thunder and Genhai's sword collided in midair, bursting out with a burst of brilliant sparks, and the entire night sky in the rainy land was illuminated at this moment. Then the bright light dissipated, and the thunder above quietly disappeared. Cheng Cheng's entire body crashed onto the ground from midair, and the floor below instantly shattered, stirring up countless rubbles. His whole body was charred, his clothes were all broken, and there was a faint smell of burning, revealing his skin that had been charred black by lightning, and there was a faint white smoke coming out of his body. The world returned to silence. At this time, Somersault Cloud brought Tuanzi over. Tuanzi jumped off the somersault cloud as fast as he could, with tears on his face, and crawled to Cheng Cheng's side crying. Master! Master! Are you okay? Just as Tuanzi was about to reach out and touch Cheng Cheng's face, he suddenly pulled back as if he was electrocuted. She widened her eyes and was surprised to find that there were tiny strands of lightning floating on the surface of Cheng Cheng's body. She grabbed Cheng Cheng's shoulders once again and shook them vigorously. The tiny lightning bolts rushed towards Tuanzi's arms like it had found an outlet. Okokokok. Tuanzi gritted his teeth and was covered in sweat, preventing himself from making any sound. Next moment, her hair stood on end as a result of the electricity, and there was a faint white smoke coming out, and her two palms were bruised by the electricity. Master! Wake up! Lao Sha! I'm going to F***KU. Come on, Master has been struck by lightning. Tuanzi shouted loudly, but in the panic, Tuanzi had long forgotten that Lao Sha left Yudi 2 days ago and went to recruit troops all over the country. Boom, 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 advertisement. There was a sound of rapid footsteps. The rooftop door was kicked open, and Shuya and Kabasi hurriedly ran up. When they saw Cheng Cheng lying motionless on the ground, they were shocked and asked hurriedly, Tuanzi, what's going on? Woo! Master was struck by lightning. Tuanzi lay on Cheng Cheng's body and twitched, not looking at them and crying. Master is gone. Woo woo woo. Kabas, leave to find a doctor. Hurry, Shuya said as quickly as possible. Kabasi turned around without hesitation, rolled and crawled on the ground, and ran away. At this time, Cheng Cheng, who was lying on the ground, slowly opened his eyes. Only his eyes had not turned black on his face. He said angrily, Tuanzi, if you don't get up, Master will really be gone. After hearing that Cheng Cheng could still speak normally, Shuya breathed a sigh of relief and collapsed on the ground. At the same time, in a certain sea area of the New World, a pirate ship sailed on the quiet sea. The red-haired Shanks sat on the deck, carefully looking at the bounty letter in his hand that Luffy grinned at, and laughed heartily. He has a warm smile, and even with 3 scars on his left eye, it's hard to think he's a bad guy. Suddenly, he clenched the reward order in his hand, stood up and stared in a certain direction. The red-haired man pointed his finger and asked in a deep voice, Jesus be you, where's that direction? Another middle-aged man holding a sniper rifle hesitated for a moment and said, it should be in the direction of Alabasta, which is still the first half of the Grand Route. Boss, what happened? A fat man gnawing on a chicken leg next to him asked with a smile. The red-haired man said slowly, I just felt a mysterious power. Marine Headquarters, Marineland. At the top of the building, Warring States was drinking tea leisurely. The tea in his hand suddenly shook and the tea spilled out. Next to him stood the sleeping Garp, holding the railing. The sleep bubbles at the corners of his mouth popped open, and his eyes suddenly opened. The two of them looked in the direction of Alabasta at the same time and looked at each other, but they were both silent. Valdigo, in the Revolutionary Army base. The leader of the Revolutionary Army, Long, suddenly laughed loudly without warning, so unscrupulously that the other cadres were confused for a while. In a small casino somewhere, a tall middle-aged man slowly walked out. He was wearing a purple kimono, holding a sword, and his eyes were closed. Although he did not open his eyes, he still silently turned his head to look somewhere and murmured, what on earth can have such sacred power? If it falls into the hands of someone with evil intentions, it will have consequences for the entire world. It would be a disaster. Looks like I have to go there myself. Chapter 85 Phoenix Fantasy Beast Species. Cayenne Rooftop. The breeze blew the golden leaves, making a rustling sound, which was crisp and sweet. Cheng Cheng and Tuanzi, one big and one small, stuck their butts out and squeezed their heads together, carefully looking at the Phantom Beast Devil Fruit on the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree. The surface of the entire Devil Fruit has red and gold concave and convex patterns, forming the shape of flame vortexes. In the center of the fruit, there seems to be a red flame burning. After Cheng Cheng had just fought against the thunder, he drank some of the water of life that had just been condensed in the Great Holy Grail. After taking a shower and putting on a brand new black suit, his condition now looks much better. Cheng Cheng slowly stretched out his hands and placed them near the devil fruit, feeling its scorching temperature, and said with a smile, Duanzi, I think this should be a devil fruit related to fire. Based on my experience of traveling around the world for less than a month, I feel the same way. Tuanzi sighed arrogantly, then looked at Cheng Cheng with concern and asked, Master, are you really okay? Cheng Cheng raised the corner of his mouth and said matter-of-factly, it's just a natural disaster, I haven't taken it seriously as a teacher. With that said, Cheng Cheng reached out and touched Tuanzi's little head. After being struck by the remaining thunder on his body, Tuanzi's hair became surprisingly softer. As soon as his hand touched Tuanzi's hair, Tuanzi immediately rolled his eyes, shrugged his shoulders and started to twitch. Master. Oh. You have electricity. You have electricity. Let me go. Tuanzi shouted loudly, and his slightly soft hair became fluffy again. Cheng Cheng looked at Tuanzi's current appearance and laughed heartily. Ah ha 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 ha. Tuanzi pouted and soon started laughing too. She looked at the only devil fruit and said, Master, I seem to be able to hear the sound of birds chirping inside. Cheng Cheng then reached out and picked off the devil fruit and handed it to Tuanzi. Don't worry so much, you will know everything after eating it. Tuanzi nodded heavily, his eyes filled with perseverance. He took the phantom beast devil fruit with both hands and started to chew it regardless. Cheng Cheng narrowed his eyes and guessed, a fire-type fruit? First of all, it cannot be the Logia ability of Ace or Red Dog. Flames and Birdsong. Could it be Phoenix? Cheng Cheng looked at the dumplings who had quickly eaten every bit of the devil fruit, his mouth opened slightly and his eyes widened. Advertisement Tuanzi's eyes glowed with golden red flames, and a phantom of a phoenix 100 meters tall slowly appeared behind him. The phantom's body was burning with golden red flames, and every feather was glowing with a little golden light, as lifelike as if it were real. The huge banana crocodile sculpture that was originally lying on the rooftop is now as small as a bug compared to the phantom of the phoenix. The temperature on the rooftop rose rapidly, and the surrounding air became distorted. The parasols, wooden tables, wooden chairs, and flowers and plants around the rooftop all burst into flames in an instant and turned into ashes. Then the huge phoenix silhouette raised its head and flapped its wings, quickly became smaller, and shrank back into Tuanzi's body. At this time, the golden red flames in Tuanzi's eyes also disappeared, and the whole person's temperament seemed to have completely changed. Congratulations, my great disciple, the devil fruit you ate is incredible, Cheng Cheng said with a smile to Tuanzi without looking at the burning flames around him. Tuanzi's black pearl-like eyes widened and he asked hurriedly, Master, what kind of fantasy beast did I eat? Is it very powerful? Phoenix Phantom Beast. This is a very rare beast. In the future, you may be even more powerful than that guy named Kaido, Cheng Cheng explained with a smile. Tuanzi was all smiles and cheered, and then said domineeringly, Who cares about Mr. Kaido-kai? I will beat him up when I see him in the future. Cheng Cheng smiled even more happily. Then Tuanzi became confused again. Master, how do you use this Phoenix Phantom Beast species? You need to think about it yourself. Cheng Cheng casually waved his hand, and the strong sword wind instantly extinguished the surrounding flames, and continued. After all, I don't have any experience in this area. Tuanzi groaned, closed his eyes and felt it for a while, then slowly took out the interpreter and dark chaser from his waist and held them tightly in his hands. Suddenly, she opened her eyes, and golden red flames suddenly rose from the black and white swords. Tuanzi swung his swords rapidly and simultaneously, and two fierce flaming sword energy flew out, forming a false mark in the air, drawing a hot flame trail in the air, and then disappeared 100 meters away. Master. Look, it's amazing. Tuanzi turned around excitedly and looked at Master. Cheng Cheng's face was filled with astonishment and he slowly gave Tuanzi a thumbs up. Then he glanced at the empty water of life in the Great Holy Grail, and he was already looking forward to what the next Phantom Beast Devil Fruit would be. Advertisement west of Alabasta, Juba. It was early in the morning, the temperature was still very low at the moment, and the leaves of the rows of saplings by the river were covered with dew. Kosha was so excited these days that he couldn't sleep. He got up at 5 or 6 o'clock every day and walked lightly among the saplings. He looked at the saplings that now had at least 1,000 living trees, and his face was full of joy. He was humming an unknown ballad and snapping his fingers. After checking the saplings one by one and confirming that they are alive, he will take out the list and draw a checkmark on it. Yuba used to be a trading center in the western part of Alabasta, an oasis city in the past. When Kosha was a child, he witnessed how Yuba developed step by step. But Yuba, which had finally developed, had experienced 3 years of drought and war, and the entire city had become a ruin. After the kingdom was pacified, Kosha disbanded the rebel army. He just wants to spend all his time in the future building Yuba into a new oasis again. A pure desert oasis with only trees and no traders. But later, he met Cheng Cheng. Cheng Cheng cut down all the trees he had worked so hard to plant with one sword, and at the same time gave him a towering tree and a life with infinite possibilities. Kosha stepped on the soft soil under his feet, walked to a sapling, straightened it slightly, and then lightly stepped on the soil near the root of the tree to make it firmer. Then he looked up at the towering trees behind him and sighed to himself. If it weren't for the Imperial Master, I might not be able to see this scene before I die. If Yuba really becomes an oasis again in the future, then this towering tree is the heart of the oasis. After he returned to the camp, people came to him one after another with saplings to report. Following Kosha were more than 30 guards from the Kingdom Guard, all of whom were sent by Princess Vivi to help. The guards pointed out the places where the saplings were to be planted after the people reported in. Everything is running smoothly and orderly. Kosha swung his legs with a smile on his face, snapped his fingers with his left hand, and registered his name with a pen in his right hand. At this time, a guard ran over with a face full of horror. His nose was bruised and his face was swollen, and there was blood flowing from the corner of his mouth, and he shouted loudly. Mr. Kosa, it's bad. A group of Marines came from nowhere and are cutting down our big tree. Chapter 86 Rescue snapped. The pen in Kusha's hand was broken in an instant. He slammed the table and stood up. He said with a cold expression. Leave one person here to continue filling in the form. Everyone else follows me. Mr. Kosha, those Marines are not malicious, you must be careful. After saying that, the guard with a bruised nose and face lay on the ground, blood flowing out from his waist and seeping into the soil. Kosha didn't have time to help him heal his injuries, so he shouted to the people queuing up to get saplings. Go find a doctor quickly and help him stop the bleeding. Then he walked forward quickly. The other 30 or so guards of the escort team, without any hesitation, followed Kosha and ran towards the only towering tree. Although Kosha was once the leader of the rebel army and the enemy of their king's guard. But it did not affect their admiration for Kosha at all. They said they were rebels, but the people in the escort knew that they were actually just ordinary people who wanted to survive. Apart from fighting against the kingdom guards, they had never heard of the rebels harming people and taking human lives lightly. On the contrary, the people of Alabasta are very supportive of the rebel army, otherwise there would not be so many people joining, and in the end it grew to 600,000 fighters. This group of people, headed by Kosha, rushed towards the giant tree in front of them. After everyone ran over, a thick cloud of dust rolled up on the ground. Kosha ran forward regardless, and soon saw a marine warship parked on the river bank. The main mast on the battleship was broken in the middle for unknown reasons, and the mast and the main sail tilted down. The uneasiness in Kosha's heart became stronger and stronger, and he accelerated and ran forward again. Not long after, Kosha and the others arrived near the giant tree. Looking from a distance, Kosha found 3 or 5 marines standing under the tree and pointing, while another one was wielding an axe to chop down the tree. Stop! Stop it all! At this moment, a deep depression has been cut out of the roots of the giant tree, but because the trunk is too thick, the entire giant tree does not tilt. Seeing this scene, Kosha clenched his fists, his eyes flashed with coldness, and his heart was bleeding. The 6 marines under the tree couldn't help but stop their movements when they saw more than 30 people coming, but none of them looked panicked. The person in the middle was even more sarcastic and said jokingly, "Are you the reinforcements brought in by that loser just now?" When Kosha saw that they stopped what they were doing, his steps slowed down. At the same time, his right hand quietly clenched the long sword in his hand. He looked at these marines coldly and said sternly, "Now, get out of here right now, I can spare your lives." Advertisement. The 5 tall marines were stunned for a moment. They all looked at each other, seeing the surprise in each other's eyes, and then burst into sarcastic laughter. "Ah ha ha ha, who do you think you are? Do you think of yourself as the king of Alabasta?" I can't help but laugh, ha ha ha. No, I suddenly remembered that even the king of this country would not dare to offend our lieutenant general. Let me tell you the truth. We are Lieutenant General Ghost Spider's men and we have been ordered to commandeer this tree. If any of you dare to stop it, you are going against our lieutenant general and the entire marine. Marine, the one in the middle with a stubble on his face, looked at Kosha and the others with disdain on his face. The marine holding an axe under the tree smiled slightly, raised the axe and struck hard again. Kill them. Kosha gritted his teeth and said word by word. His feet suddenly exerted force, and a burst of yellow sand splashed on the ground. Kosha rushed forward quickly, drawing out his long sword at the same time, rolling up a long dust trail on the yellow sand ground. The guards behind him also roared and rushed forward without saying a word. Bang! 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 The marines under the tree saw them rushing over and shot them without expression. Kosha's figure at the front moved sideways and flashed, easily dodging the bullets, but 3 guards behind him were shot and fell to the ground. Kosha became even more angry, and his figure suddenly flashed and came directly in front of the 4 marines. The long sword struck down in the air, and the sound of breaking through the air was heard. The 4 marines who fired saw only a flash of sword light in front of them, and the spears in their hands were neatly cut into 2 pieces, and they could no longer fire a second shot. Then Kosha took a sidestep, changed his body shape, and came to Marine holding an axe. He thrust out the sword fiercely, and brilliant blood flowers bloomed on the man's arm. Ah! The man screamed in pain, and the axe fell to the ground. The burly Marine smiled instead of getting angry. I really don't know how high the sky is. I never thought someone would dare to attack us. After saying that, the man turned around and left with the Marines. At the same time, he did not forget to say to Kosha and the others. If you are a man, don't leave. You ignorant people, just enjoy your last life. Ha 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 ha. Kosha looked at their departing figures coldly and did not stop him. He immediately said in a deep voice to the guards around him. You all take the injured brothers back to the camp first and go there to heal their wounds. In addition, contact the National Master as soon as possible. Grown-ups. Let me tell you, sir, that Kosha owes you the promise of the National Preceptor, and he will pay it back in the next life. Advertisement. The expression of a guard changed slightly, and he heard that Kosha was giving his last words, and said hurriedly, Mr. Kosha, we won't leave. If you want to die, we will die here together. We have followed Mr. Kosha for so many days, and what have you done for this place? Everything you give is visible to us. Marine is really bullying people too much, and he is unreasonable. Yes, we are not cowards, we won't leave. If we don't leave, I don't believe they can really kill us all. Kosha shook his head with a wry smile and laughed at himself. What kind of sacrifice do I have to do? It is the adult who really pays. I am just an errand boy, but now I can't even protect a tree. If you don't want to leave, don't leave. At least you should separate out a few people, carry the wounded brother back to the camp, and tell the National Master what happened here. After hearing this, a few of the guards hesitantly carried the injured man on their backs. They all turned back and took a deep look at the brothers left behind by Kosha. One of them said, You stay alive and wait for me, I will be back soon. After saying that, the 4 people who carried the wounded on their backs left quickly. Kosha slowly sat down against the giant tree. He glanced at the more than 20 guards left behind and said slowly and calmly. Let me meet you again. My name is Ko Sha. What about you? Rainland, Cayenne Rooftop. At this moment, the rooftop has been cleaned again, and the burned parasols, tables and chairs have been replaced with brand new ones. In order to facilitate contact, Cheng Cheng also placed a phone bug on the table. He looked contented, shaking the wine glass in his hand, and looking at the dumplings in front of him with a smile. Tuanzi is no longer swinging his sword like crazy like before. Instead, he is holding two black and white swords and slashing a cross-shaped flaming sword energy into the air in front of him every once in a while. She also gave this move an extremely domineering name, Cross-Flame Dragon Slayer. This resulted in the people below the ground seeing a cross of flames flying out of their heads every once in a while, and they all pointed at the flames with great interest. Polo, polo, polo. The phone bug on the table in front of Cheng Cheng suddenly made a sound and vibrated slightly. He casually answered the phone, and slowly, his face became more and more solemn, and his pale golden eyes were reflected in the wine glass. Boom. The wine glass shattered and the red wine in the glass was scattered on the floor. A mere lieutenant general dares to touch my people. Cheng Cheng looked cold and stood up immediately. His figure was like the wind, stepping on moonwalk and quickly rushed out of the balcony. He shouted in the air, Somersault Cloud. Chapter 87 Lieutenant General Ghost Spider. Along the way, Cheng Cheng was extremely anxious, and Somersault Cloud seemed to sense Cheng Cheng's feelings and started the fastest speed in history. In the blue sky, a very long golden line was left between the land of rain and the land of Juba. When Cheng Cheng flew over Yuba, he looked down at the scene below. I could only see that the sapling forest below was in a mess, with all the trees swaying here and there. The huge tree that was originally on the bank of the St. Dora River also disappeared out of thin air. It should have been the most conspicuous giant tree, but now it can't be found. Not good. Cheng Cheng was suddenly startled and continued to rush forward. Soon he discovered the original location of the big tree. When he came to the big tree, the original huge towering tree now only had a stump less than 50 centimeters in height. There were more than 20 kingdom guards lying around the tree stump. The ground was dyed red with blood, and the air was filled with a strong smell of blood. Cheng Cheng walked over slowly, stretched out his hand to detect the breath of those people, and found that they were completely dead. Then Cheng Cheng spotted Kosha's figure on the side behind the tree stump. Kosha was lying on the ground with his limbs spread out, his glasses were broken, his eyes were full of red bloodshot eyes, there were countless knife marks all over his body, his black clothes were all torn apart, and his hands, feet, and limbs were bleeding continuously. His eyes were dull, staring at the sky dimly and hollowly, tears silently flowing down his cheeks. Seeing that Kosha finally had a life left, Cheng Cheng couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and said helplessly, "It's just a tree. If it's lost, it's lost. You were once the leader of a 700,000-strong rebel army. Why are you crying? Get up, I'll take you to chop them to death." Kosha just lay on the ground, motionless, muttering. "What kind of marine are they? How dare you wear a cloak with justice written on it? They didn't kill me. They wanted me to watch them cut down the trees to make masts, and then watch them slowly leave, but I was helpless, like a waste." When Cheng Cheng saw Ko Sha still lying motionless, he looked doubtfully at the wounds on Ko Sha's hands, feet and limbs. Advertisement Kosha's hands, feet, limbs, and all the joints and tendons were all severed, and there was no place in his body where he could use his strength. Suddenly, an unknown anger rose in his heart. He narrowed his narrow eyes, clenched his fists, and cursed, "Scum." Cheng Cheng quickly took out a fairy bean and stuffed it into Kosha's mouth, and asked quickly, "Do you know the other party's name?" "Ghost Spider. There is a two-headed dragon pattern on the man's helmet, and there are 8 hairs like arms on his back, all holding swords, and the last one is his hand," Kosha said in a low voice. After eating the fairy beans, Kosha's face gradually began to turn rosy, the wounds on his wrists and limbs stopped bleeding, and the knife marks on his body began to slowly scar. Cheng Cheng muttered, "Ghost Spider." He knew this person. Like Smoker, he was one of ZFA's disciples and one of the 5 lieutenant generals who participated in the Buster Call plan. He has a cruel personality and doesn't care if he hurts his subordinates when performing tasks. He is a typical hawk in Marine. Then he suddenly thought of something important. During the war, he was the one who escorted Ace to Marinavender. When the war started, he was even more of a troublemaker on the battlefield. Seeing that Kosha was lying on the ground and his limbs were moving normally, Cheng Cheng said softly, "You rest here for a while, and I will chop off that bullshit lieutenant general's head for you right away." "Master National Preceptor." Kosha struggled to stand up and said with difficulty, "I'll go too." Cheng Cheng hesitated for a moment, then took Ko Sha onto the Somersault Cloud. The Somersault Cloud slowly rose, and then I saw the confluence of the Centaur River and the sea in the distance, and a marine warship was sailing slowly. "I found you." Cheng Cheng sneered and somersaulted forward quickly. At the mouth of the Centaur River, a huge marine warship is about to sail into the sea. The equipment on the battleship is well equipped, and the previously broken main mast has been completely renewed. The deck was full of officers talking and laughing, drinking and talking. That group of people just now were so stupid. They dared to fight to the death for our marine just for a worthless tree. In the end, their lives were not in vain. Advertisement. But don't tell me, that tree is really a good material for the main mast. I haven't seen such a straight tree for a long time. This tree can finally be used as the main mast on our battleship, which can be considered a complete merit. Ah ha 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 ha. After the marine finished speaking, there was a burst of laughter. Yes, it is such a great merit to be on the ship of our Lieutenant General Ghost Spider. In the entire marine deck, there was only one tall middle-aged man who was not smiling. He was wearing a helmet in the shape of a two-headed dragon, with a white cloak behind him fluttering in the wind. The two big characters of justice on the cloak were blown by the sea breeze. He had a ferocious face, and he was the type that children would not dare to cry when they saw him. He snorted coldly from his nose, "A bunch of rubbish, are you the ones who deserve to judge them? They can die for a mere tree, but can you die for the justice in your heart?" Suddenly, the entire deck was silent, and the atmosphere was terrifyingly heavy. The Marines silently suppressed their smiles and put down the wineglasses in their hands. They knew the Lieutenant General too well, and he was a ruthless person who dared to kill Marine if they disagreed. It's okay to joke no matter what you do, but once this gentleman changes his expression, he will kill someone as soon as he says it, and he won't give you a chance to argue. What Lieutenant General Ghost Spider said is that those kingdom guards are indeed worthy of admiration, but they still died in the hands of the wise and powerful lord, especially the guy who had his whole body broken by you. That guy was the grown man actually lay on the ground and started crying. A thin Marine walked up to Ghost Spider and said enthusiastically, "Ah ha 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 ha." Another burst of joyful laughter suddenly broke out. But this time the laughter stopped quickly. Ghost Spider suddenly drew his knife, and the fierce sword flashed past. The head of the skinny Marine standing in front of him rolled down to the deck, and blood spurted out from his neck instantly, like a fountain. The head that rolled to the ground still had its eyes wide open. Noisy. Lieutenant General Ghost Spider snorted coldly, raised his foot and kicked the head into the sea. The head hit the surface of the sea 3 times like a ball, causing 3 splashes before sinking into the water. No Marine dared to speak, and even their breathing was carefully slowed down, for fear that their breathing would be too loud and disturb the Lieutenant General. Suddenly, the Ghost Spider raised its head and looked at a group of golden clouds high in the sky. Chapter 88 Yijanju Convergence. Lieutenant General Ghost Spider frowned, involuntarily clenching the 2 knives in his hands, and his pupils gradually dilated. A huge sword energy that was tens of meters long fell rapidly from the golden cloud. A harsh sound broke through the air, as if the air was about to be split. Boom! Suddenly there was a loud noise. To his surprise, the huge sword energy did not strike directly at his ship, but struck at the point in front of the ship where the Sentola River merged with the sea. The water splashed, and a deep ravine instantly appeared on the Sentola River. The river water was cut off by the sword that fell from the sky, and the flow stopped. The battleship underfoot also stopped slowly, leaning against a deep ravine and unable to continue moving forward. Could it be that Hawkeye took action? No, Hawkeye is Shichibukai now, he has no reason to attack me. Who the hell is that? The Ghost Spider's momentum surged instantly, and life return was activated. The hair on its back turned into 8 arms, each of which held a sword tightly, ready for battle. Then he saw a second, larger and thicker blue sword energy falling from the sky, followed closely by a figure in black walking through the air. At this moment, the Marines on the deck all raised their rifles and adjusted their cannons to aim high in the sky without Ghost Spider's orders. Fire! Bang! 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 Countless black cannonballs packed with huge energy shot straight into the sky and collided with the sword energy. But whether it was bullets or cannonballs, they all disappeared after hitting the huge sword light. The blue sword energy showed no signs of weakening. After seeing that the cannonballs were useless, all the Marines began to show frightened expressions. Everyone began to run away, like dumplings, jumping into the river to escape. Boom! There was another loud noise, and the 30-meter-long blue sword light hit the huge battleship in an instant. The huge Marine battleship was split into 2 and exploded suddenly. Dust and smoke were everywhere, and for a while a sea of burning fire appeared on the Sentola River. Everywhere was filled with screams, like purgatory on Earth. Lieutenant General Ghost Spider had already stepped on Moonwalk and hurriedly avoided the huge sword light. He was suspended in the air and looked coldly at the man in black who rushed over. Advertisement Cheng Cheng's face was expressionless, and he ignored the screams below. His eyes were just staring at the Ghost Spider Lieutenant General standing in the air. His figure continued to rush forward quickly, turning into a breeze. He lifted the Genhai sword, which had turned dark, and there was water surging on the sword. The sound of breaking the sky sounded. Cheng Cheng's figure instantly appeared above Lieutenant General Ghost Spider's head, and struck him vertically with a sword in the air. Why are you standing so high? Get off here. Ghost Spider had no time to speak, and hurriedly activated his arm domineering energy. All 10 swords in his hands turned black and were crossed above his head. Clang! The moment the Junhai sword collided with the 10 swords, sparks flew. Lieutenant General Ghost Spider was instantly smashed into the ground, creating a deep pit. The ground shook and dust flew up. The few surviving Marines looked at this scene in shock. It's so strong, it can actually suppress Lieutenant General Ghost Spider. Who is this white-haired young man? Why have I never heard of him? At this moment, Kosha, who was sitting on top of the somersault cloud, clenched his fists, and his nails dug deep into the flesh of his palms without realizing it. His whole body was trembling with excitement. It turns out that what I have always wanted is power. What I have always longed for is power. What is lacking most is strength. I must become stronger. Cheng Cheng carried the Genhai sword expressionlessly and fell to the ground. In the large pit ahead, the dust dissipated, and a tall black figure slowly climbed out of the pit. Lieutenant General Ghost Spider had a ferocious look on his face and spat fiercely. He was very embarrassed by Cheng Cheng's sword. However, there was not much fear in his eyes, but instead a trace of excitement. He asked coldly. Are you? Who is it? Why did you attack my marine battleship for no reason? Cheng Cheng was calm and said sarcastically. Laozi is not in a hurry to kill you, he just wants you to die clearly. Remember, you, Marine Lieutenant General, died today because of a tree. I'm afraid you will also be the Marine Lieutenant General who died the most ridiculous death in marine history. Lieutenant General Ghost Spider narrowed his eyes. You dared to kill me? My name is Cheng Cheng, the honest one. It means if I kill you today, you won't survive tomorrow. After finishing speaking, Cheng Cheng held the Zhenhai sword with both hands for the first time. There were blue water waves surging on the sword body, and a strong cyclone instantly spread around him with him as the center, rolling up a strong yellow sand. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet suddenly sank. Cheng Cheng held the sword in both hands. The blue sword light on the sword was 1 meter long, and his figure rushed forward like lightning. Starburst Air Current Slash. Cheng Cheng. Lieutenant General Ghost Spider read the name silently, and it always felt a little familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere. Advertisement, but at this time, facing Cheng Cheng's fierce attack, he could no longer think too much. He also rushed forward, waving 10 swords at the same time, and faced it with great momentum. Clang. Cheng Cheng held the Zhenhai sword with both hands and launched the Starburst Airflow Slash with all his strength, instantly colliding with the Ghost Spider's 10 swords. The air vibrated, and all 10 swords buzzed. Ghost Spider took 3 steps back and smiled ferociously. I was careless just now and was attacked by you. Now it seems that you are no good either. You are still far behind Hawkeye. Villains die from talking too much. Don't you even know this? I really hope you can hold on longer. Cheng Cheng sneered, lunged forward again, slashed horizontally with his sword, and once again let out a fierce sword energy. Dang. 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 Lieutenant General Ghost Spider raised his sword again and began to fight with Cheng Cheng desperately. With the power of the 10 swords, he and Cheng Cheng were fighting fiercely for a while, evenly matched. Every time the swords collide, a burst of brilliant sparks will be emitted in the air, creating circles of invisible air ripples. On the ground, sword energy was everywhere. The originally flat ground was now filled with ravines of varying depths, and in each ravine there was a hint of sword energy. Starburst Air Slash was originally a double sword style sword skill. It's just that Cheng Cheng has been wielding swords for 10 years, and his understanding of the way of kendo has already reached the level of perfection. He casually changed the 2-sword style into the one-handed sword-holding style, and there was no sense of disobedience when performing it, just like flowing clouds and flowing water. Smooth. The Starburst Air Slash has a total of 16 strikes, and each attack will be stronger than the last. When the last sword is struck, the momentum reaches its peak state in an instant. In addition, the Zhenhai sword itself has the characteristic of increasing its weight every time it is swung. The combination of the Starburst Airflow Slash and the other two makes it even more powerful. Soon, Cheng Cheng had already swung 15 swords. Lieutenant General Ghost Spider was covered in blood, but he still had a ferocious smile on his face. It seems you can't kill me, right? You may not know that my ability is to return life, and I have much stronger endurance than ordinary people. As long as I can't kill you with one sword, no matter how strong you are, I can kill you. Cheng Cheng silently felt the dozens of fairy beans in the space ring, and looked at the Ghost Spider with a pity expression. It's a pity that you don't have a chance. At this time, the Starburst Airflow Slash has reached its final form. The Zhenhai sword's blade buzzed, and the sword shadows from all directions in the air quickly gathered towards the Zhenhai sword. Cheng Cheng rushed forward again, leapt high into the air and slashed diagonally with his sword. Lieutenant General Ghost Spider also slashed forward with his sword. Clang. This time, all 10 swords shattered like glass, and a gorgeous blood flower bloomed from the middle chest of the Ghost Spider. The 10 sword hilts fell to the ground at the same time, and his body slowly tilted back, falling to the ground like a dead corpse. Eyes wide open, Chapter 89. A call from headquarters. Seeing the Ghost Spider lying on the ground, Cheng Cheng sneered, little trash. He raised the Zhenhai sword and slashed out a huge sword energy of tens of meters. The water flow instantly resumed at the breakpoint of the St. Dora River. The wreckage of the warships on the river also slowly floated and merged into the sea. At this moment, the somersault cloud had fallen, and Kosha came to Cheng Cheng in silence. Suddenly he fell to his knees, prostrated on the ground, buried his head on the ground and made a firm and trembling voice. Master Imperial Master, when I signed a contract with you before, you told me that when I want to become stronger, when the time comes, you will become stronger. Now, I feel like I'm starting to need strength. Cheng Cheng stepped forward, helped Kosha up, and asked slowly, have you really thought about it? I would rather die, but I also want to become stronger. Kosha bit his lips tightly, tears streaming down his eyes silently. At this time, Cheng Cheng took a look and felt the water of life in the Great Holy Grail. 1/3 of it was already stored, so he said, in that case, you can leave the work of planting trees here and let others do it. This matter will be fine. Just come back to Cayenne with me now. Kosha nodded and hesitated. But those trees. No matter how big a tree is, it is just a tree after all. It is far less important than people. No matter what happens next time, let yourself live first. As long as you are alive, there are infinite possibilities. Cheng Cheng patted Kosha on the shoulder and said solemnly, you should understand what I mean. Kosha nodded slightly. Then the two of them set foot on the somersault cloud together again, streaking a golden light in the sky, and then flew away. After stopping in the camp and giving instructions, they flew towards the rainy place. The corpse-like ghost spider on the ground slowly opened its eyes, and with great difficulty, he took out a small telephone bug from his clothes. With a slight movement of his fingers, he dialed a phone number that was so familiar that he couldn't be more familiar with it. Moxie Moxie. Moxie Moxie. This is Marine Headquarters. Who are you? Please speak. A rough voice soon came from the phone. Ghost Spider opened his mouth with difficulty, and as soon as he opened his mouth, a large mouthful of blood spurted out of his mouth. He whispered with difficulty, I am Lieutenant General Ghost Spider. I am seriously injured now. My battleship was attacked by Alabasta's national commander Cheng Cheng. All Marines on the battleship were not spared. This man is powerful and is a big enemy of our Marine. I request our headquarters to offer a reward immediately. Advertisement, Lieutenant General Ghost Spider. Where are you now? We will rescue you immediately. Moxie Moxie? Lieutenant General Ghost Spider? Moxie Moxie? The receptionist at the Marine headquarters looked nervous and was sweating profusely. After calling several times in a row, there was no other sound coming from the other side. As a result, he now didn't know where Lieutenant General Ghost Spider was. However, the receptionist judged from the vague voice on the other side of the phone that Lieutenant General Ghost Spider was gone now. He must report this news as soon as possible. The death of a Lieutenant General in the Marine headquarters is never a small matter. Holding the phone bug in his hand, he pushed open the door of the answering room as quickly as possible and rushed to the office of the top leader directly under him. Not long after, the receptionist and the leader who received the intelligence appeared together in the Fleet Admiral Sengoku office. Lieutenant General Ghost Spider is dead. After hearing the news, Marine Fleet Admiral Sengoku pushed up his glasses, turned around with a calm expression and took out a secret file bag from the drawer. There were many small grids on it to separate the file bag. Soon, he saw the name of Lieutenant General Ghost Spider. When he took out a card, he was surprised to find that the card had turned into fly ash. Then Garp, who was sleeping next to him, woke up when he heard the news, and said in a deep voice, It has been a long time since the Lieutenant General of our Marine headquarters died. Who is so ignorant that he dares to kill my Lieutenant General Marine? We must be severely punished. Warring States period, don't say anything, and be wanted immediately. Warring States looked stiff, looking at Garp and wanting to tell him that you were just a Lieutenant General. But there were other people around at this time, so he didn't want to say anything more and asked slowly, Do you know who killed him? Alabasta's national preceptor, Cheng Cheng, the receptionist said bravely. Fleet Admiral Warring States looked at Garp with a strange expression and said softly, Cheng Cheng? Alabasta's national preceptor? Look at what I'm doing. I'm wanted immediately, there's no need to hesitate. Garp looked serious and spoke righteously, but after finishing speaking, Garp whispered the name Cheng Cheng again. With a bang, the solid wood desk was immediately smashed into pieces with a palm, sending sawdust flying. Advertisement, Cheng Cheng? He's not my grandson, is he? Then Garp quickly muttered to himself, No, it shouldn't be. Although my grandson has the appearance of a general, he is still young after all. Although they killed Crocodile in Alabasta some time ago, that is not the case after all. It was done jointly with Luffy and the others, and after finding Crocodile's weakness. Cheng Cheng's real strength is definitely not that strong. He said that he actually killed Lieutenant General Yishi. This is slander. This is definitely slander. Fleet Admiral Sengoku sighed and asked, Do you know what that person looks like? I don't know, Lieutenant General Ghost Spider didn't even have time to say, the receptionist said honestly. Fleet Admiral Warring States nodded and said, Okay, you can go out, I understand this matter. Yes. Fleet Admiral. After the two of them finished speaking, they saluted at the same time and turned to leave the Fleet Admiral office. In the office, Garp and Fleet Admiral and Warring States were left looking at each other in silence for a long time. Fleet Admiral Warring States looked at his desk that was shattered on the floor, feeling heartbroken, and then looked at Garp who was looking a little depressed, and persuaded. I tell you Garp, you don't really think that Cheng Cheng, who killed the Ghost Spider, and your grandson is alone, right? This is too disrespectful to the Lieutenant General of our Marine headquarters. Tell me yourself, how old is that boy Cheng Cheng? Is he 19 years old? So, I also think this is a misunderstanding. Maybe it's another conspiracy of the big pirate against Alabasta. Don't forget that thing. It's always been in Alabasta. Although that kid Cheng Cheng is talented, willing to endure hardships, and looks like me when I was young, let alone a general, if he is willing to stay in Marine, he may be able to sit in my position. After some comfort from Fleet Admiral Sengoku, Garp's expression finally softened a lot, and he said, That's right, I'm too excited, but I don't have the money to accompany you at this table. But Warring States, who do you think is better for investigating this matter? Fleet Admiral Sengoku pondered for a while and said slowly, Kizaru gets off work relatively early these days. He should have nothing to do. Let him go. And Kizaru is also quite measured. After all, the other party is Alabasta's national advisor, so we still need to investigate it carefully. Garp stood up, turned around and pushed out the door. Where are you going? Fleet Admiral Sengoku asked behind him. Garp said without looking back. I suddenly remembered that I haven't seen that boy Kizaru for a long time. Let's catch up on old times. Chapter 90 Blazing Fireworks. When Cheng Cheng and Kosha returned to the rooftop of Cayenne, it was already noon. Cheng Cheng was surprised to find that Princess Vivi had arrived out of nowhere, and Tuanzi had also put on a brand new pink skirt. Without asking, he knew that this was specially made by Princess Vivi for Tuanzi. After falling into the somersault cloud with Kosha, Cheng Cheng asked with a smile, Why did Your Highness the Princess come to see me when you have time? When Princess Vivi saw Cheng Cheng coming back, she immediately ran to Cheng Cheng's side, held his arm with both hands, and her soft body was close to Cheng Cheng's arm. Brother Cheng Cheng, if you are so polite again, I will never visit you again, Princess Vivi blushed and said in embarrassment.
Cheng Cheng felt the unusual softness and warmth coming from his arms. His body froze slightly, then he calmed down and joked with a smile. If I were to be rude, I would be quite an animal.
I'm not afraid, Princess Vivi said stubbornly, then turned and went downstairs. You and Kosha must be very thirsty after running all the way. I'll make you tea first.
Tuanzi, who was waving the flaming sword as if desperately, turned his head and saw the intimate scene between Cheng Cheng and Princess Vivi. He couldn't help frowning and snorted.
With a flick of his wrist, a huge flame that was hotter than before slashed out the sword energy. Kosha has calmed down a lot along the way, at least on the surface there is nothing strange, but there is still some deep hidden loneliness between his eyebrows. He straightened his back, sat on the chair and asked again, Master National Preceptor, can I really become stronger? Cheng Cheng thought for a moment and said with a smile. Whether you can become stronger or not, there is absolutely no problem with your will. As for luck, it depends on whether the phantom beast devil fruit you eat is what. Then Cheng Cheng smiled and pointed at Tuanzi, who was on fire. If you are lucky enough to eat a demon fruit of the same level as Tuanzi, plus your character, you will be strong even if you don't want to. Disaster. Kosha nodded silently without saying anything, and turned to stare at the fantasy beast spirit tree suspended in the center of the rooftop. Advertisement. He stared at the golden spiritual tree, and his mood slowly calmed down with his breathing. He clenched his fists, his eyes gleamed, and his words were firm. When he spoke to Cheng Cheng, it was more like saying persuade yourself. When I was an ordinary person, I could lead 700,000 rebel troops. If I become a phantom beast devil fruit user, there is no reason why I should be weak. Cheng Cheng smiled and said, this is the high-spirited leader Kosha I know. Light footsteps sounded. Princess Vivi had already walked up with a tea set and greeted with a smile. Xiao Tuanzi, you come over to drink tea and rest for a while. I'm not thirsty. Tuanzi snorted coldly, but swung his sword harder. Cheng Cheng smiled and said, don't worry about her. She's so stubborn that she came here on her own initiative when she was thirsty. Princess Vivi took a deep look at Tuanzi, her eyes filled with distress. She didn't understand why she had to practice so hard despite having such a powerful master. With Cheng Cheng's love for him, he will definitely live without worries about food and clothing for the rest of his life. Is this fruit tea? Cheng Cheng looked at the thick ingredients in the cup and asked doubtfully. Princess Vivi came back to her senses and explained proudly, this fruit tea is my exclusive secret recipe. It contains lemons, passion fruits, oranges, watermelons, pineapples, limes and grapes, which I picked personally. Then add a certain proportion of honey, seal it and marinate it overnight, and then you can drink it. After saying that, Princess Vivi poured a cup for Cheng Cheng and Kosha, handed it to Cheng Cheng with both hands, and said with a smile, try it and see how it tastes. Cheng Cheng raised his hand, raised his head and took a sip. He immediately felt a chill all over his body and couldn't help but exclaim. Yeah, it tastes sour and sweet. Princess Vivi sat down with a happy face, looked at Cheng Cheng and said, Brother Cheng Cheng, I came here to see if I can help you, but you don't even know that the tree planting activity you are doing now, people all over the country are very grateful to you, and my father was very happy after hearing this. He said that he would add an additional 800 million in rewards to participate in this event, and he also hopes that you can extend this event for another month. Cheng Cheng smiled and took another sip of fruit tea. What's wrong with this? It's a great thing for the country and the people, but if you want to help, there's nothing you need to help with, and the activities are not. It's been going on for so long, and everything is functioning normally. If you are really fine, you can play in the casino for a few days before going back. Advertisement. Princess Vivi's eyes were filled with water, and she said with a resentful look, I really want to help, but I'm not just here to play. By the way, Kosha, weren't you in Yuba before? Why are you back now? Kosha, who was tasting the fruit tea, was speechless for a moment and didn't even know how to explain. Forget it, if you really want to go, just go to Yuba's place for a few days, but you should bring more guards with you, just in case you encounter any danger. Cheng Cheng said helplessly, and then he looked at Tuanzi who was about to burst into flames and said, Duanzi, how about you accompany the princess to Yuba? No, Tuanzi said without looking back. Princess Vivi said hurriedly, it's okay, Tuanzi is still young. Why did you ask her to go there with you? I'll be fine with my guards myself. Besides, don't forget, I used to be a senior agent at Baroque Works. The three of them drank tea and chatted on the balcony. Princess Vivi would ask about Cheng Cheng's childhood from time to time, while Kosha asked more about his combat experience and Cheng Cheng's own training process. Time flew by like a flash, as if it was just a turn and the afternoon passed. In the evening, Princess Vivi left the Rainland and went to Yuba to prepare to take over Kosha's previous work. Kosha was sitting cross-legged on the ground, slowly getting familiar with the breath of water given to him by Cheng Cheng. Tuanzi is always releasing the Cross-Flame Dragon Slayer / tirelessly. Different from the daytime, the Cross-Flame Dragon Slayer / at night is even more blazing. After these few days, every night, a group of young children would stand under the cayenne, looking up at the sky, as if they were watching fireworks. Every time they see the Cross-Flame Dragon slaying / emitting blazing red light, it will attract a burst of cheers from them. Oh, what's happened to the people around me? All of them have become cultivators, Cheng Cheng said helplessly as he looked at the two people in front of him. Now it seems that I have become the most leisurely person. Chapter 91. The second one, Uncle, You haven't done a system task for a long time. Do you want to do the next system task now? Close black lens bracket. The next day, early morning. After Cheng Cheng finished breakfast, he went to the rooftop to see if his fantasy beast spirit tree had grown up. But it is a pity that as long as it is not irrigated with the water of life, the fantasy beast spirit tree will not grow at all. Even the fracture position of the phoenix fruit that was picked before was still exactly the same as that day, without any change. He was just about to reach out and touch the branches of the magical beast spirit tree, thinking that he was the owner of the magical beast spirit tree after all and wanted to communicate with it, but he did not expect that the system would actually take the initiative to speak. And he still urged himself to complete the task. Cheng Cheng looked strange and said, "Doesn't your system also have performance appraisal?" After a while, the system seemed to understand what Cheng Cheng meant. "Yes, sir." Close black lens bracket. "It's so damn curly," Cheng Cheng sighed sincerely and continued. "Let's talk about it first. If it's not far away, I can also do the task, but can we make the reward of this task a little more awesome? For example, give me immortality, or give me an elixir to bring the dead back to life. The previous rewards were also very good, but I always feel that I am invincible, which is still not interesting. Uncle, the rewards are all random and there is no authority to change them." Close black lens bracket. "Okay, I know, let's talk about the mission location," Cheng Cheng said calmly, not too disappointed. Originally, he just asked casually and didn't think about the rewards that could really adjust the prize pool. The next mission check-in location is the Red Foss. Close black lens bracket. After the system finished speaking, Cheng Cheng narrowed his narrow eyes and whispered softly, "Red Foss, isn't this a red-haired pirate ship? This mission is a bit interesting. I'm planning to meet the red hair these days." Then Cheng Cheng placed the Great Holy Grail in the space ring on the table. Looking at the water of life in the cup, it was almost full again. The corners of his mouth curled up. It seemed that the effect of his tree planting activity was pretty good. Advertisement. Cheng Cheng thought silently, let it keep rising like this, the more, the better. At this time, Tuanzi walked onto the rooftop, holding 3 knives on her waist, stopped at the mouth of the banana crocodile, and began to continue releasing her cross-flame dragon slayer. Cheng Cheng looked at Yanran, who had become the disciple of the crazy cultivator. He smiled and waved, "Tuanzi, we will practice again later. I want to ask you a question." Tuanzi walked over in silence and said doubtfully, "What's the matter, master? I still have to continue practicing. My time is very precious." "Don't you like Princess Vivi?" Cheng Cheng rubbed Tuanzi's head and asked softly. Now Tuanzi's hair has become jet black, shiny and extremely smooth. He can no longer feel the same feeling as when he was rubbing the grass nest. And after eating the phoenix fruit in the past few days, Tuanzi's skin has become noticeably fairer, and baby fat has appeared on his face. There is a faint red light in his black pearl-like eyes, and his cheeks have become brighter all day long. It's rosy. She is completely different from the girl who looked like a skinny monkey when she first saw Tuanzi. Cheng Cheng was sure that if Sabo saw Tuanzi now, he would never dare to recognize her immediately. Now Tuanzi's skin is white and tender with a red glow. If she grows up according to the current trend, she might become a peerless beauty who can conquer the entire country and have her first moon shining. Of course, she probably can't change her fiery temper. Tuanzi didn't dare to look into Cheng Cheng's eyes and just nodded silently. "Can you tell master why?" Cheng Cheng asked with a smile. Tuanzi just lowered his head, pursed his lips, and said nothing. "Okay, if you don't want to say it, don't say it. But let me tell you, Princess Wei Wei is a nice person. Don't be so hostile to her, she is not easy either." Cheng Cheng stretched out and felt that the sleepiness on his body had suddenly disappeared, and his energy was much better. He continued. "Although your flame cross slash is very powerful, Tuanzi, your efforts seem to be in the wrong direction." "Ah?" Tuanzi finally raised his head, staring at Cheng Cheng with a pair of black pearl-like eyes. Cheng Cheng thought for a moment and motioned for Tuanzi to sit down. He also walked to the chair and sat down. "Because in my impression, the strong ones with the devil fruit of the phantom beast seem to become stronger through transformation. You are only using the flame of the phoenix to use the phantom beast's ability now, and you have not developed the phoenix fruit at all. The ability to transform. Advertisement, what you are using now is more like your Master Ace's Logia fruit. For a phantom beast fruit like yours, it's a bit overwhelming." Tuanzi widened his eyes and asked, "Master, can I become a phoenix?" "Theoretically, it's possible. After all, your uncle Luffy can also transform. The current Fleet Admiral Sengoku at Marine Headquarters, as well as another guy named Kaido, have greatly improved their strength after transforming." Cheng Cheng continued to say seriously, "So, you can also think about it and try to transform. This will improve you much faster than practicing the Flame Dragon Slayer slash all day long." Tuanzi looked at Cheng Cheng with bright eyes, full of excitement. "Don't worry, master, I will definitely succeed. I'm sure, with your talent, it shouldn't be difficult to do this. After all, even a weak-minded person like you, Master Luffy, can successfully transform." Cheng Cheng said casually with a faint smile. Not to mention anything else about Tuanzi, he was extremely confident in his talent. Tuanzi walked to the head of Banana Crocodile and sat down cross-legged. The 3 knives hanging on his waist were also placed in front of him. He closed his eyes and felt the power of the Phoenix Phantom Beast Devil Fruit contained in his body. After a while, his whole body was once again enveloped in golden red blazing flames. The temperature on the rooftop rose a lot in an instant. Cheng Cheng smiled slightly, lying on the chair and gently shaking the banana fan, causing waves of hot air. The time soon arrived in the afternoon, and Cheng Cheng just sat leisurely in a chair and spent the whole day in a daze. I watched with my own eyes as the water of life in the great holy grail slowly rose, and now it was already a full cup. Cheng Cheng took a deep breath and stood up slowly. Duanzi, Kosha, come here, the second phantom beast devil fruit will be ready soon. Kosha, who had his head buried in the bucket, suddenly raised his head and water splashed everywhere. Because he had never been able to learn water breathing, he came up with this method of holding his breath in the water. Tuanzi, whose whole body was burning with golden red flames, put away the flames, opened his eyes and stood up. Cheng Cheng poured the water of life on the roots of the fantasy beast spirit tree without hesitation. In an instant, golden light flourished, and a golden beam of light shot straight into the sky. The branches of the entire fantasy beast spirit tree began to grow slowly, and at the same time, a golden flower with purple lines also bloomed quietly. Chapter 92 Nine-Ringed Sword and Brothers. The golden light beam dissipated, and the phantom beast spirit tree, which was originally 1 meter high, only slowly rose by about 10 centimeters, and then stopped growing. That golden flower with purple lines bloomed quickly and then withered quickly, like a short-lived flower in the pan. After all the petals fell, the golden energy on the phantom beast spirit tree began to slowly gather at the location of the fallen flowers, and a phantom beast devil fruit with purple and gold lines was quietly born. Cheng Cheng looked at the second phantom beast devil fruit with a smile on his face, and was very curious as to what phantom beast form it was. But no matter which one it is, as long as Kosa doesn't take the common people's form, other than this form, even the worst phantom beast species are stronger than Logia, ancient species and the like. Cheng Cheng raised his eyebrows at Kosha, indicating that he could pick them off now. Kosha's face was flushed and he was looking at the devil fruit with excitement. After seeing Cheng Cheng's signal, he immediately strode forward without hesitation. When Kosha's hand was about to touch the devil fruit, it stopped in the air. Then he took a deep breath, turned around and said to Cheng Cheng. Master National Master, no matter what phantom beast species I eat this time, it will be my life, Kosha. If I am lucky enough to eat a very strong phantom beast species, no matter how strong I am from now on, my life will be your majesty. These words have nothing to do with the contract we signed. Cheng Cheng smiled and nodded without saying anything more. This time, Kosa didn't hesitate at all and picked off the devil fruit with purple and golden twisted lines on its surface. Holding it in both hands, he opened his mouth and ate it all in 2 or 3 mouthfuls. Even the inedible stem of the devil fruit was swallowed into his mouth. Cheng Cheng and Tuanzi both looked at Kosha seriously, wanting to see what changes would happen to him. At the same time, they also held down the table with one hand to prevent the table that had just been replaced a few days from being used again like last time. Broken. However, this time, there was not as much momentum as last time, and there was no such exaggerated appearance of a huge phoenix shadow. Kosha, how do you feel now? Cheng Cheng asked aloud. Kosha felt the changes in his body, thought for a while and said, it seems that there is a special power in my body. I can't tell what it feels like. Kosha then closed his eyes and tried to find and grasp that power, and then he said, found it. Suddenly, the skin on Kosha's body began to slowly turn purple, and the muscles in his body and limbs were also expanding rapidly, and the veins on the muscles began to surge as the muscles expanded. Soon, under Cheng Cheng's gaze, Kosha transformed from a man with sallow skin and a well-proportioned figure into a burly, muscular man with purple skin all over his body. Cheng Cheng stared at Kosha in bewilderment for a long time. He always felt that Kosha was very familiar now, as if he had seen him before somewhere, but he just couldn't remember. Advertisement, Kosha, how do you feel now? Cheng Cheng asked. Kosa, you've become so ugly now. You're not as good looking as before. Fortunately, I didn't eat this devil fruit. Tuanzi looked at Kosa with a look of disgust, and his body couldn't help but twitch, as if it was. I despise Kosa for what he is now. Kosha clenched his fists, and the muscles in his arms swelled instantly. He said excitedly, I feel very good now, as if there is endless power in my body. This power is like the ocean, with a wave. Then there was a wave, vast and boundless, and my skin seems to be very hard now, so I shouldn't be afraid of ordinary swords now. Tuanzi curled his lips, you're bragging, I don't believe it. Then give it a try and test the effect first, Cheng Cheng said decisively. Snapped. Kosha snapped his fingers and said excitedly, no problem, I also want to try my power now. After seeing Kosha snap his fingers, Cheng Cheng's head suddenly clicked, and his thoughts seemed to be opened instantly. He suddenly thought of a supervillain. Thanos. This is the eternal clan from Titan, a powerful existence that has destroyed countless worlds. Thanos possesses unimaginable strength, and his recovery ability and speed are beyond ordinary people's understanding. Especially his purple skin, his defensive ability is invincible. In addition, before Thanos was cursed by his secret admirer, the goddess of death, to become immortal, he could survive without eating anything. Cheng Cheng stared blankly at Thanos, no, at Kosha. I am very surprised in my heart. I wonder how far you can use the devil fruit in this Thanatos fantasy beast. Then Cheng Cheng patted Kosha on the shoulder and said seriously, let's go down and find an open place to experiment, but don't tear apart my cayenne again. It's not that exaggerated, right? Kosha said doubtfully. The person walking at the end of the group looked up at the white clouds in the sky, as if he didn't know anything or heard anything. Out of the cayenne door, Shuya and Kabas were still busy registering people who came to collect saplings, and there was an endless queue on the road. Advertisement. Fortunately, after so long, most of the processes have been standardized and they don't need to spend too much thought. Kosha looked at the two people who were still immersed in their work, and snapped his fingers above their heads. Shuya, Kabasi. You hand over the work to others first, and let's go out. After Shuya and Kabasi raised their heads, they looked confused. Are you? I'm Kusha. I just changed my skin color and you can't recognize me anymore? It's a good thing we grew up together, Kusha said angrily. After hearing this familiar tone, Shuya and the others recognized that it was Kusha. Both of them stretched out their hands to touch Kusha's muscles, and they were full of praise and admiration. Cheng Cheng looked at Kosha's habitual action and frowned slightly. He stepped forward and put his hands on Kosha's shoulders. He said with an unusually serious expression, Kosha, you can't snap your fingers like this. I won't fight if I don't want to fight in the future, you know? Kosha scratched his head. This was the first time that he saw the master of the state talking to him in such a serious tone. He originally thought it was something important, but he didn't expect that it was such a trivial matter. Master Imperial Master, is there any taboo in snapping your fingers? Kosha asked blankly. Cheng Cheng said in a deep voice. No, I just don't want you to snap your fingers. Remember, this is my only request for you. Kosha lowered his head and looked at his purple palm in confusion. He subconsciously put his thumb and middle finger together and rubbed them gently, but he couldn't figure it out. 10 minutes later, Cheng Cheng and his party of 5 came out of the rainy land and into the desert. Cheng Cheng looked at the vast desert and felt filled with emotion. If you don't come to the desert in person, you will never feel the majestic scene of the desert. Walking 1 kilometer away from the UD City Gate, Cheng Cheng said, just stay here. The place is big. You can make as much noise as you like. Kabasi is holding a 9-ring sword in his hand. The back of the sword is thick and there are 9 iron rings on the edge of the back. It jingles when he walks. In particular, this knife is very thick, and Kabasi will sharpen his precious sword whenever he has nothing to do. Boss, do you really want me to chop you? Kabasi hesitantly raised the 9-ring sword, the blade shining with dazzling light under the sunlight. Are we brothers? If we are, come and chop me down. Kosha instantly transformed into Thanos form, stood upright, and said with great confidence and domineering. Come on, cut it on the head. Chapter 93 Power. In the endless desert, from time to time, strong winds would stir up the yellow sand on the ground, flying and circling in the sky, like the thinnest yellow silk in the world. Kabasi raised the 9-ring sword high above his head. He swallowed. He was honest, but he was not stupid after all. How could he really listen to Kusha and just go to greet him directly? He took a deep breath, and suddenly exerted force on his waist and abdomen. The 9-ring sword cut through the air with a clanking sound. The sword flashed and slashed hard towards Kusha's shoulder. Kosha looked at the sword that was coming at him, his expression unchanged. His body is now full of strength, and he feels like he can kill a Poseidon with one punch. Clang. The blade of the 9-ring sword collided with the purple skin on Kosha's shoulder, and there was a sound of gold and stone colliding. Kabasi instantly felt a huge reaction force coming from the 9-ring sword. His palm went numb, and the 9-ring sword fell to the ground. His eyes widened in disbelief. He boasted that he had always been very strong. When had the sword been knocked off when he was slashing someone? Kabas, you use your full strength this time. Don't worry, Kusha won't be injured. Even if he is injured, I can heal him immediately, Cheng Cheng said with a smile. Kabasi picked up the 9-ring sword again, nodded to Cheng Cheng, then clenched the handle of the sword with 5 fingers, and said seriously. Boss, then I will be really rude this time. Kusha looked calm, as if the person who was chopped just now was not him at all. Kosha, who was already confident, became even more confident after this test, and said proudly. Come on, try harder, don't think of me as the boss, I am Crocodile now. As soon as Kabasi heard Crocodile, his eyes turned red and he became angry. Ah! He yelled. He raised the 9-ring sword above his head again, and suddenly slashed at Kusha's forehead without hesitation. This time he didn't hold back anything. Clang. There was a sound of gold and stone. The blade of the 9-ring sword was shattered like glass, and the blade was broken into more than a dozen pieces of iron fragments and scattered on the ground. Advertisement Kabasi's hands were still holding the only remaining hilt of the knife, and he was in a daze on the spot as if petrified, muttering. My knife, my knife. Tuanzi and Shuya on the side looked at Kosha with dumbfounded eyes, as if they were looking at a monster. Boss, this is too strong. The skin is really thick, even this proud dumpling had to say with emotion. Cheng Cheng saw it and was equally shocked in his heart, but he knew that the Thanos fruit's ability was far more than that. After all, it was the first day that Kosa ate the devil fruit today, and many of his abilities had not yet been fully developed. First disciple, come and try it. Use your crossflame to kill the dragon. Cheng Cheng looked at Tuanzi with a smile and said. Tuanzi nodded excitedly. There are not many opportunities like this. She said coldly to Kusha. My master asked me to take action. If I burn you to death, don't blame me. Of course, you can't blame my master. You can only blame yourself for being too weak. Kosha smiled bitterly and nodded, saying, Don't worry, Tuanzi, I won't blame anyone. Tuanzi stopped talking nonsense and trotted back about 10 meters, putting some distance between him and Kosha. The interpreter and the dark chaser were instantly drawn out, held tightly in her hands, and they secretly used the power of the phoenix fruit. In an instant, the black and white swords were wrapped in golden red flames. For a while, the air around the sword was distorted by the blazing heat. Tuanzi took a heavy step, crossed his arms and slashed forward at the same time. Cross-flame dragon slayer slash. 2 golden red flaming sword lights crossed and flew out in an instant, forming a cross in the air, roaring towards Kusha. During the flight, the cross flames grew long in the wind, leaving traces on the yellow sand ground. The next trace of scorch. Boom! The blazing flames struck Kusha in the blink of an eye, and Kusha's whole body instantly fell into a sea of golden red fire, and the flames were overwhelming. A big hole was made in the ground, and the sky was filled with yellow sand. In the vast desert, it's like another sun falling into the ground. Shuya and Kabasi both stared at the center of the sea of fire with worried expressions. Shuya's 10 slender fingers were tightly intertwined with each other, and she asked nervously, "Is there anything wrong with Kosha? Master National Preceptor?" Cheng Cheng smiled slightly. "Don't worry, advertisement." After a while, the sea of fire receded, the yellow sand dissipated, and the world returned to peace. Kosha looked at the skin on his body with excitement. He couldn't see any traces of injury, but there was a little more red in the purple skin, making his current skin color darker. Shuya quickly ran to Kusha and asked worriedly, "Kusha, are you okay?" "It's okay. I'm in good condition now," Kosha said with a happy smile. Then Shuya stretched out her hand to touch the bulging muscles on Kosha's arm. As soon as her white fingertips touched the purple skin, she quickly retracted her hand as if she was electrocuted. "So hot," Kosha smiled, jumped twice on the spot, and turned 360 degrees in the air. "Look, I feel full of power now. No one can kill me." Kabasi looked at Kosha with admiration. Tuanzi put away his black and white swords and muttered, "It's no use being able to resist being beaten. You have to be able to attack in a fight. Master taught me that offense is the best defense." "Really, Master?" Cheng Cheng smiled and flicked Tuanzi's forehead with his finger, and cursed with a smile. "What's going on? You didn't mean to use this sentence here." Then Cheng Cheng looked at Kosha and said, "But what Tuanzi said makes sense. This time it's you who beat me. It's best to use all your strength. Let me see where your limit is." Kosha nodded. He knew how powerful the Imperial Master was, so he was not arrogant enough to think that he could hurt Cheng Cheng. After arriving in front of Cheng Cheng, he took a deep breath, and the purple muscles all over his body swelled again. The ground sank instantly, and at the same time, he swung an extremely fierce punch quickly. The purple fist was wrapped in a fierce fist wind, tearing the air. On the opposite side, Cheng Cheng's entire arm instantly turned black, and he also punched out. Boom! 2 fists, one black and one purple, collided in the air, making a violent sound. The surrounding air began to vibrate instantly. Kosha was knocked back 3 steps by the shock, and Cheng Cheng's figure slid backwards more than 10 meters away, leaving a deep ravine on the yellow sand ground and hitting the boulder behind him heavily. "Kosa! Just wait for me!" Tuanzi shouted angrily and rushed forward immediately, shouting, "Master, Master, are you okay?" Chapter 94 Respect. Red-haired Cheng Cheng lay in the yellow sand and did not get anxious. It seemed that he had flown far away, but because he had prepared in advance, he did not actually suffer much damage. Staring blankly at the blue sky, the clouds are rolling and relaxing in the sky. "Do I also have to eat a phantom beast devil fruit?" Cheng Cheng muttered to himself, but after thinking about it, he decided to forget it and complete the system tasks first. After all, in his opinion, the system is the most invincible existence. At this time, Tuanzi rushed over and threw himself on Cheng Cheng, his black pearl-like eyes filled with tears. "Master, are you injured there? Are you okay?" Cheng Cheng grinned and said, "How could it be possible? Master, don't you know how powerful I am? How can a mere Thanos hurt me?" Tuanzi asked with confusion. "When did Kusha change his name?" "Isn't the title I just changed to Kosha very domineering?" Cheng Cheng said. Tuanzi rolled his eyes and said, "Thanos, Thanos, you have lost all your domineering power, and you are still so domineering." Cheng Cheng stood up in a jiffy, rubbed Tuanzi's head and said, "Don't hold grudges against Kosha. He didn't mean it. Besides, Master was really not hurt." Tuanzi gritted his teeth tightly and said through his teeth, "I don't hate it." As for Kosha himself, he has not recovered from the deep shock. He just looks at his fist blankly. "Did I beat the Imperial Master away? No, it must be the National Master who is playing me, trying to give me confidence. The Master is so great." However, Kosha was still unwilling to tell the truth. He always believed that a great favor cannot be thanked. Saying thank you easily is just the easiest way to express your gratitude. After Cheng Cheng and the others completed their purpose of coming out this time, they stopped lingering in the yellow sand and began to return home. Along the way, Kosa's purple skin attracted the attention of countless people, who were all very surprised. Advertisement. Cheng Cheng said helplessly, "General Thanos, please collect your magical powers first. Let's go back and practice slowly." Kosha grinned. He was also very satisfied with the nickname Thanos. After dissipating the power of the devil fruit, his skin slowly turned from purple to yellow. After that, there were fewer unnecessary stairs on the road. Cheng Cheng frowned and thought, looking at Tuanzi and then at Kosha. Both of them ate the phantom beast devil fruit, but Dango's talent is obviously stronger, so why can't he transform until now? Kosa's talent is mediocre, so why can he complete some simple transformations on the first day after eating the Thanos fruit? Does it mean that each fantasy beast fruit has its own characteristics? Or is it just a coincidence? Then Cheng Cheng shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Even if Tuanzi's Phoenix Fantasy Beast Seed fruit couldn't transform, no one would be able to bully her in the future with just her talent in swordsmanship. Shuya, who was following behind, walked up quickly and said with a smile on her face, "Master National Master, you see, Kabasi and I have signed a contract with you, more than a dozen of us, you will give us a devil anytime. Fruit? Cheng Cheng smiled slightly and said, if you think more about how to do good things in Alabasta and make the people grateful to us, the devil fruit will definitely be eaten by each of you. Shuya thought for a long time with a red face before saying, Master Imperial Master is really a great person. But I still like the way you picked up your sword and slashed me when you didn't agree with me when you first met me. Cheng Cheng looked up at the sky and sighed. Shuya lowered her head even further and buried her head in the crack. Kabasi and Kosha laughed heartlessly. Back in Cayenne, Cheng Cheng and Kosha held another small meeting. The general purpose of the meeting still revolves around how to improve the happiness of the people of Alabas, and then tell them that they will go out in the near future, maybe a month at most, and will be back in a week at the earliest. It is best for Kosha not to leave Cayenne and protect the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree before Cheng Cheng comes back. Kosha naturally had no objections to this and solemnly agreed. This small meeting did not go to the conference hall. It was just a few of them chatting on the balcony. It was an informal meeting. Cheng Cheng raised his head and took a sip of wine. With a flash of golden light in his hand, he placed the large holy grail emitting golden light on the table. Great disciple, during these few days of leaving as master, the great holy grail will be handed over to you. As long as the water of life in it is full, you can just pour it on the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree. There is no need to think about anything else. Advertisement. Cheng Cheng raised his head and took another sip of wine. His face turned red. He rubbed Tuanzi's head and said. Tuanzi replied, Master, I understand, don't worry. But at this moment Tuanzi looked surprised again and asked, Master, didn't you say you were going out soon? Why are you still drinking so much? Cheng Cheng was a little stunned for a moment. He didn't know how to explain to Tuanzi. He raised his hand and took a sip of wine. After thinking for a while, he said calmly, the person I want to meet this time is very unusual. I don't know why. Want to drink. Is this person very strong? Tuanzi asked. Very strong. Is this person a bad person? Tuanzi asked again. If according to your understanding, he is not a bad person. Cheng Cheng hesitated for a while before saying. Master, are you afraid of him? Tuanzi stared at Cheng Cheng and asked. Cheng Cheng stood up, drank the wine in his glass, poured another glass slowly, and then said slowly, in this world, there are no people I fear, only people who make me stand in awe. Then Cheng Cheng shouted a somersault cloud to the sky, picked up the last glass of wine, lay on the somersault cloud, and waved goodbye to Tuanzi and the others. The sea breeze is howling and the sky is blue. Soon the somersault cloud carried Cheng Cheng to the sky above the sea. Cheng Cheng was already a little dizzy from drinking, and the vague memories of One Piece from his previous life also appeared in his mind. Countless pictures flashed by quickly. Of all the pictures, there was only one that impressed Cheng Cheng the most. On the sea, the red-haired man who had just had his arm bitten off by Poseidon lowered his head and rubbed little Luffy's head. Luffy, who was still a child, grabbed the red-haired man by his collar and cried uncontrollably. This is not only where Luffy's journey to One Piece begins, but also where Cheng Cheng's passionate boyhood dream begins. After all, in that boring world, only the fantasy world can pass the time. Feeling dizzy, Cheng Cheng stood up, raised the wine in his glass, and threw it into the sea. The bright red wine shines like ruby under the sunlight. Then Cheng Cheng threw the cup hard into the sea in the distance and said loudly. Here's to you, Redhead, Chapter 95 Zeus and Nami. Sky Island. Near the abandoned building, there was a mess. There were deep pits everywhere on the ground, and wisps of green smoke were rising. Enel looked lazy, pointing the golden cane in his hand into the sky, and suddenly a blue thunder and lightning fell from the 9 heavens to the world. Boom! After a huge thunder, mist covered the sky and gravel shot up. Strong air waves quickly spread around, and a deep pit instantly appeared on the ground struck by lightning, with billowing black smoke rising. Weber, the last indigenous warrior to stand up against Enel, was hacked to the point of unconsciousness. Nami was knocked down by the strong airwave, her pupils shrank, and she looked at everything around her in fear. Chopper, Zoro, Robin, and Usopp have all been knocked down by lightning, lying on the ground covered in blood and not knowing whether they are alive or dead, and Luffy doesn't know where he is now. Enel stood in front of Nami, pointing the flashing blue electric light in his hand at Nami's forehead, and said contemptuously, You are the only one left now, do you want to continue fighting, little girl? Nami suddenly broke into a cold sweat, his eyes were full of fear, and he stammered. I can't fight, please. Please take me away, I will go to the dream world with you. Enel then looked at her doubtfully, and Nami forced herself to look normal, tried her best to smile, and asked, Can't I go? Seeing that Enel didn't say anything, Nami quickly said, Then I'll take it as your acquiescence.
Enel nodded slightly and walked forward. Then Nami quickly jumped into the big pit created by lightning, and when Enel didn't notice, he stuffed a fairy bean into Weber's mouth.
Then they quickly came to Zoro, Robin, Usopp, and Chopper. Each of them stuffed a fairy bean into their mouths, and they all said something in the smallest voice. Don't be in a hurry to come back to life, wait for Luffy, I will leave a mark for you on the road. Enel, who was walking in front, saw that Nami had not followed, so he turned his head and looked over in confusion. Only to see that Nami was already standing on the Weeba, he said softly, Where we are going, there is no need for such a thing. Nami said pitifully, But I like it very much, advertisement. Enel continued to walk forward in silence and murmured, They are not afraid of God's punishment. They are very ignorant. Only if you are different and have fear in your heart, can you get closer to God. Yes, you're right, Nami, who pushed way ba, nodded repeatedly. Along the way, Nami quietly followed Enel through the forest and entered a huge cave. When she walked into the cave, she was instantly shocked by what she saw. In front is an Ark spaceship that is as huge as a hill. There is an extremely huge red character written on the cabin, God. Enel looked at the Ark in front of him and laughed wildly. This is the spaceship Proverbs that only I can pilot. From now on, we will take it to fly away from the Earth and reach a new world. Nami was suddenly shocked. It's over. If it was really flying in the air, how could I escape? After Enel took Nami onto the spacecraft, they entered the cabin. Nami was left alone crawling on the edge of the deck. She looked at the ground so high away, and her heart collapsed. This is too high. I will definitely fall to death if I fall. At this time, Nami was surprised to find that a white cloud was slowly floating at the entrance of the cave, and there was a red and yellow peaked cap on the cloud. Somersault cloud. Why have you turned white? Nami immediately thought it was a somersault cloud coming, and whispered happily so as not to let Enel in the cabin hear it.
White cloud slowly floated in front of Nami and asked slowly, "Are you Sister Nami?"
Ah. Nami was suddenly startled, fell back and sat on the ground, pointed at Bai Yun and said, "Yes, I am Nami. How can you speak? Are you not Somersault Cloud?" "I am a friend of Sister Somersaultian, my name is Zeus." Zeus said slowly, "Brother Cheng Cheng told me that you have delicious food here, so he asked me to come to you. Originally, Sister Somersaultian brought me here, but then she went back in the middle, so I came here alone." Nami asked with some embarrassment, "What do you like to eat?" "Look, I'm empty now, I don't have anything to eat. I like to eat thunderclouds." Brother Cheng Cheng said you have endless thunderclouds here. Sister Somersault Cloud's owner will definitely not lie to me. Zeus looked at Nami greedily, as if he wanted to find something from her. Where is the thundercloud hiding?
Layan, Brother Cheng Cheng. Nami is such a smart person, he figured out the key almost instantly.
Advertisement. I understood Cheng Cheng's intention. She hurriedly stood up and waved the weather wand, and a black electric bubble flew out from the top of the weather wand. Inside the transparent bubble, there were black thunderclouds wrapped with lightning. Before she could ask, Zeus eagerly opened his mouth and swallowed the electric bubble into his mouth. After a burst of lightning and thunder, Zeus looked satisfied, looked at Nami expectantly with his eyes wide open, and asked, "Is there anything more?" Nami was deeply shocked by the scene in front of her. She swallowed and asked, "Can you eat thunder and lightning? The very strong kind?" "Of course you can. The stronger one tastes a bit bitter, not as delicious as this little thundercloud," Zeus said happily. Nami's face suddenly brightened. "Take me out of here first. Let's go find Luffy first. This place is not safe now." "Good." Zeus agreed without hesitation and slowly lowered his body to Nami's knees. Nami climbed onto Yunduo skillfully and looked back at the cabin. Seeing that Enel had not come out yet, she said softly, "Let's keep our voices down and leave here quietly." Zeus hummed and slowly floated towards the entrance of the cave with Nami. Nami kept looking at the direction of the spacecraft warily, and saw that Enel was still there, so she slowly felt relieved. Finally, there was less than 50 meters left from the cave entrance. 30 meters. 10 meters. Nami's heart was beating loudly. As soon as she got out of the cave, she immediately asked Zeus to speed up, so that she could escape from here and find Luffy and the others. Only 5 meters left. Suddenly, at the entrance of the cave, a loud roar broke the silence in the cave. "Ennis, come out. See if I don't beat you away." Luffy rushed into the cave and shouted at the top of his lungs. Nami immediately slapped his forehead and said quickly to Luffy, "Come on, Luffy, I have escaped now, let's get out of here." Luffy said with a stubborn look, "No, Enel injured you like that, I have to beat him away." "Enel, come out and die." Chapter 96. Bayan Luffy. After hearing the sound, Enel slowly walked out of the cabin. Looking down at Luffy, Nami and the others, seeing Nami actually running to the entrance of the cave, Enel frowned slightly and ignored Nami, looking haughtily at Luffy wearing a straw hat. "Who are you?" Gong Mo, pistol." Luffy couldn't answer his question, he yelled a slogan, and quickly spun his arms and threw them out. The two arms stretched a lot in an instant, suddenly grabbed the railing of the spacecraft, and then the whole body was ejected. At the same time, Enel calmly tapped Luffy and whispered, 3,000 volts of lightning, Thunderbird. Boom. The Thunderbird transformed from blue lightning crashed into Luffy, erupting into a burst of black smoke. "Ah, it hurts," Luffy screamed, fell out of the air, and landed heavily on the ground. "Luffy," Nami exclaimed, looking at Luffy worriedly. At the same time, she was wondering, isn't it right? Isn't Luffy the rubber man who ate the rubber fruit? Rubber should not conduct electricity, so lightning should be ineffective against Luffy, right? What is this? But at this moment, the situation was critical. Enel, who was standing on the spacecraft, had begun to accumulate power again, and the surface of his body was flashing with thunder and lightning with astonishing momentum. Nami turned her head and looked at Zeus with a smile on her face. "Zeus, handsome cloud, look at the thunder and lightning just now, do you like to eat it?" "I don't like it very much. The thunder and lightning just now definitely tastes bad. It's not as delicious as the bubble thundercloud you gave me," Zeus hesitated and said. Nami said seductively, "How about this? You go to Luffy's side and protect him. As long as he doesn't get struck by lightning today, I can eat as many thunderclouds as you want from now on. How about that?" Zeus thought for a while and said, "Well, you are not allowed to regret it. No, you go out and ask around. I, Nami, don't have a reputation for promising a lot of money," Nami said with pride. Zeus also knew the seriousness of the matter. If he didn't go, The guy lying on the ground who could extend his arms would probably be struck to death by lightning, so he quickly rushed towards Luffy. 60 million volts, Thunder Beast. Enel, who was standing on the spaceship, shouted loudly. The blue lightning flashed with great power and condensed into a tiger-like Thunder Beast in the air. It opened its mouth from top to bottom and rushed towards him. The speed of thunder and lightning is so fast that it cannot cover one's ears. Advertisement in the blink of an eye, the Thunder Beast rushed in front of Luffy. At the critical moment, Zeus blocked Luffy's head and the Thunder Beast crashed into Zeus. Boom! Thunder and lightning roar. The clouds on Zeus' body instantly turned black, completely absorbing the Thunder Beast wrapped in thunder and lightning. Luffy, who was lying on the ground, was unhurt. Baiyun. Thank you, you are so handsome, Luffy said with a grin. The clouds on Zeus's body swelled a bit, full of pride. This is only 60 million volts, I am not afraid of any thunder and lightning. Then Zeus suddenly expanded a bit and crashed into Luffy's body. The white clouds formed a circle of white battle clothes around Luffy's body, wrapping him up. There was also a white cloud cloak floating in the wind behind him. Wow! So cool, Luffy said excitedly. His body suddenly felt much lighter, and he jumped directly onto the deck of the spaceship. After landing on the deck, Luffy raised his hands high, struck a pose that he thought was cool, and said in a deep voice, I am now Baiyun Luffy. Snapped. Nami slapped his forehead suddenly and said helplessly, Luffy, at some point, can you stop playing? Luffy grinned at Nami with dignity, I'm not playing around, I'm serious. Enel looked at Luffy in front of him, his expression becoming more and more solemn. Could this strange white cloud absorb his own lightning? I don't believe it, this little cloud can absorb it all the time. I'll hold you up to death, 100 million volts. God's punishment. Enel's whole body was flashing with blue electric light, he raised his golden cane high and swung it down suddenly. A huge blue thunder beam fell from the sky. Luffy paid no attention to the thunder and lightning beam, and suddenly threw his hands back, and the white clouds on his body also lengthened. Gong meng gong, machine gun. The thunder and lightning beam hitting Luffy had no effect on him at all, but Luffy's arm had turned into countless phantoms, hitting Enel like a violent storm. After Enel was hit with an unknown number of punches, the last punch sent him flying backwards and hit the guardrail of the spacecraft. 2 wooden guardrails were instantly broken. My spaceship. Enel stood up in embarrassment and stroked the broken position of the railing with distress. You wanna die? Advertisement. There was lightning and thunder for a moment, and Enel frantically released lightning towards Luffy, but Zeus was like a bottomless pit, always able to absorb his lightning. Half an hour later, Enel looked at Luffy with sweat on his face. His lightning attack was ineffective against Luffy. Luffy's attacks can also be avoided through the heart network. No one immune to death. Enel sighed, forget it, I won't play with you mortals anymore. It's boring and a waste of time. After saying that, his figure jumped like lightning and quickly came behind Luffy. He waved the golden scepter and directly hit Luffy to the entrance of the hole. I'm leaving. Boring mortal. Luffy shouted angrily, long-eared thief. The battle between us is not over yet, don't leave. Gong mo mia. Ah, Luffy suddenly screamed and was punched to the ground by Nami. Nami angrily yelled, Zoro, Robin, and Usopp are all fine. I gave them fairy beans. If Enel wants to fly away, let him go. Our key now is to prevent the explosion on the Sky Island. We don't have time to care him. Oh fine. Luffy reluctantly looked at the spaceship that had risen into the sky, and finally followed Nami away. After walking out of the cave, Nami used the weather stick to create 2 thundercloud bubbles, and said to Zeus with a smile on his face, this is a reward for you. Zeus showed greed in an instant and ate 2 thunderclouds in one bite, it's so delicious. Zeus, if that's the case, then just follow me from now on. Nami smiled brightly, her tone sincere. Somewhere in the sea near Alabasta, the somersault cloud floated slowly at a height of 1 meter above the sea. After the dazed Cheng Cheng woke up, he lay down and stretched, turned over, and almost rolled into the sea. In the early morning, the sky was already turning white in the distance. The surrounding sea was calm, and a cold sea breeze blew across his cheeks. Cheng Cheng suddenly sobered up a lot. System, how long have I been asleep? Uncle, you have slept for 18 hours. Close black lens bracket. Cheng Cheng nodded and looked behind him. At this moment, he couldn't see any shadow of the desert at all. System, start teleportation. Open black lens bracket as you command, sir. Close black lens bracket. Chapter 97. Thunder on the ground somewhere in the New World. In the morning light, white mist filled the sea, and the visibility in the air became very low. Faintly, a ship can be seen sailing quietly on the sea. The Redforth, a huge 2-masted pirate ship, was slowly sliding on the water. Dispel the fog and break the water surface, it left a long and spreading track on the calm sea. There was laughter and laughter on the boat, and the atmosphere was peaceful. There were people drinking and dancing early in the morning, and there were no other people eating breakfast except the red-haired man and the fat man chewing the chicken legs. They drank a lot last night and were lying on the deck, salivating. Ah! 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 A white beam of light fell from the sky, and Cheng Cheng was teleported directly into the air. Fortunately, Cheng Cheng calmed down quickly this time. He was not as embarrassed as when he was teleported into the air for the first time. He tapped his toes lightly, stepped on the moonwalk a few times in the air, and his body returned to stability. Brother system, can you please stop doing this next time? Wouldn't it be better to find a safe place to land? Cheng Cheng complained helplessly.
Uncle, I am random and cannot control the teleportation location. Close black lens bracket.
Alright. Cheng Cheng nodded, but then thought about it. It seemed that it wouldn't work if he were teleported directly to the red-haired pirate's red foss. In this case, will he be hacked to death by the red-haired sword? Cheng Cheng looked around, seeing nothing but white mist, but he knew he must be not far from the red foss. Slowly closing his eyes, the domineering force of the sight and sound spread rapidly like an invisible barrier, instantly covering the sea area with a radius of 3,000 meters.
Suddenly, in Cheng Cheng's dark sea of consciousness, more than a dozen red light spots appeared, all gathered together densely.
Advertisement among them, there was a red light spot that shone the brightest, like the sun in the sky, similar to what Long felt at the Revolutionary Army base that day. Here it is. Found it. Cheng Cheng smiled slightly and flew forward on the moonwalk. On the red firth, Beckman sat on the mast high up and smoked with a cigarette in his mouth, holding a wine bottle in his left hand and shaking a flintlock rifle in his right hand.
He suddenly opened his eyes and looked somewhere in the white mist ahead.
Then he looked at the red-haired man who was still eating bread quietly. Seeing that he was not moving, Beckman took a sip of wine and closed his eyes again.
The other people on the boat were all laughing, singing and dancing, paying no attention to the sudden strange smell.
Cheng Cheng flew through the air on moonwalk, leaving a faint space ripple in the air every time he tipped his toes. Soon, he saw a giant pirate ship through the white mist. On the white mainsail, there was a white skull with a pair of swords, and a red slash passed through the left eye of the skull.
On the red bow pillar at the front of the pirate ship, the carved red animal head reveals its ferocious fangs, which adds a lot of coercion to the pirate ship. Cheng Cheng recognized it immediately. This was the red foss of the red-haired pirates.
Look at the red foss 800 meters away. The red hair is on it at the moment. Whether he can change the future destiny of this world depends on whether he can succeed today. He took a deep breath to quickly calm down his nervously beating heart. After all, if you are not careful about what you are going to do next, you may die here. It is probably difficult to escape. After all, this is the red-haired pirate group, one of the 4 emperors. He continued to walk forward in the air. 20 meters away from the red foss, an invisible pressure suddenly enveloped him. Danger. This was a strong, dangerous aura, enough to threaten his life. Beckman, who was sitting high on the mast, took a puff of cigarette and rotated the flintlock rifle in his hand. He looked at the white-haired young man not far away and said, "My friend, what can I do for you? If you go any further, I won't be polite." The other people on the red fourth were drinking when they should be drinking, and dancing when they were supposed to. The fat man chewing on the chicken drumsticks was eating a lot while chatting and farting with the others around him. I don't know what he said, but he actually had made those around him laugh. Except for Beckman, everyone seemed to have never seen Cheng Cheng and completely regarded Cheng Cheng as an empty person. Advertisement. The red-haired man was staring at a glass of red wine in a daze, not looking at Cheng Cheng at all. It seemed that to him, the glass of red wine in front of him meant the whole world. Cheng Cheng stopped and hung in the air. As expected, he didn't move forward. He didn't come here to fight. He did not answer Beckman in a hurry, but glanced at everyone on the ship, and soon saw a middle-aged man with blood-red hair on the table in the middle of the deck. Cheng Cheng was sure almost immediately that he was the red-haired Shanks. He is the person he is looking for this time. The red-haired man who was in a daze at this time seemed to feel Cheng Cheng's gaze and turned his head towards Cheng Cheng. Cheng Cheng took a deep breath again and said loudly, "My name is Cheng Cheng, and today I'm here to help the red hair regain his arm." As soon as the faint words fell, it was like thunder rising from the ground. The entire red foss's originally lively atmosphere suddenly fell silent. The atmosphere was eerily silent. White fog filled the sea, and the sky and earth were silent. Only the sound of the red foss cutting through the water could be heard, and the occasional distant call of seagulls. Everyone on the red foss seemed to be petrified by the Empress for a moment and stood still. Those who were lying on the deck and sleeping suddenly opened their eyes in unison, their pupils dilated, and they tried hard to recall every word they had just heard. The fat man was tearing a big piece of bone and meat in his mouth. His fingers suddenly became weak and the big bone fell from his hand to the deck with a dull sound. The fat man's eyes, wearing small sunglasses, slowly turned his head to look in the direction of the person who was speaking. The sniper rifle that Jesus had kept with him all year round was shaking because of the trembling of his arm. This is an absolutely fatal mistake for an excellent sniper, let alone Jesus BU, who is already at the ceiling of his sniper ability. For him, this is simply impossible. The red-haired man who was staring at the red wine glass finally raised his gaze and looked at the white-haired boy floating in the air. Beckman, who was on the mast, took a deep drag on the cigarette, threw away the cigarette in his hand, narrowed his sharp eyes, suddenly raised his flintlock rifle and said coldly to the white-haired boy who was uttering wild words. "Young people, you are responsible for what you say, do you understand?" Chapter 98. Boarding the ship. As soon as Beckman's words came out, everyone on the red foss calmed down, as if a bucket of cold water had been poured on them, and everyone suddenly woke up. Yes, the boss's arm has been broken for so many years, how could it grow back again? I actually believed his words for a moment just now. I really feel more and more alive. This kind of thing is simply a fantasy. Even God cannot do it. For a moment, everyone on the red foss began to talk, and looked at Cheng Cheng with a bit of hatred. The red-haired arm has always been a regret in the hearts of all of them. If the red-haired arm had not been broken, their boss's combat power would have been at least twice as strong as it is now. Now mentioning this matter in front of everyone is undoubtedly a provocation to everyone in the red-haired pirate group, and he even threatened to make the red-haired man regain his arm. This kind of big joke, after they saw it It was even more offensive to the red-haired pirates. Arm insult. For a moment, the silent atmosphere on the ship turned into heavy pressure, roaring towards Cheng Cheng. The invisible pressure was like ocean waves, hitting Cheng Cheng in waves. Looking at the reactions of everyone on the boat, Cheng Cheng had already expected that if he had lost his arm for several years and someone suddenly told him that he could regain his arm, he would pull out the Zhenhai sword and strike him with a blow without saying a word. Sky. But now everyone on the Red Foss is calm, and no one takes action immediately, which is enough to see the self-cultivation of the red-haired pirates. Cheng Cheng said in a deep voice under great pressure. I, Cheng Cheng, naturally take responsibility for what I said, but it depends on whether you believe it or not. Are you a doctor? Beckman asked, the cold muzzle of the flintlock rifle in his hand still pointed at Cheng Cheng's head. Cheng Cheng shook his head, then pointed at the Zhenhai sword behind his back. I am a swordsman. Beckman, who was sitting high on the mast, lit a cigarette with one hand, took a deep breath and said, if you don't die if I shoot you, you are qualified to get on the ship. If you don't dare, leave now. I won't argue with you about what I just said. Cheng Cheng slowly drew out the Zhenhai sword from behind his back and said in a deep voice, come on. As soon as he finished speaking, Cheng Cheng immediately felt a sharp aura locking on him. He had a feeling that no matter how hard he tried to dodge, he would not be able to dodge this shot. Cheng Cheng sighed, as expected of Wang Fu. Even though he hadn't made a move yet, the pressure was like a mountain of tack. Keeping his eyes on Cheng Cheng's red hair, he stood up and said softly, Beckman, this kid is not weak. I know, boss. Beckman, who was sitting high on the mast, agreed with a smile. Then Cheng Cheng felt that the pressure on his body suddenly increased. He raised the corner of his mouth and looked at Beckman and said, Wang Fu, don't be careless, you will suffer a loss. Advertisement. Beckman smiled and blew the long hair hanging down from his forehead, and suddenly flipped the rifle switch with his index finger. Boom. The surrounding airflow quickly rushed towards the flintlock rifle, and the muzzle exploded instantly, flashing a red tongue of flame. White smoke rose with the flame, but Beckman's arm did not move at all under the huge recoil. A pure black bullet wrapped in arm-domineering energy shot towards Cheng Cheng as fast as lightning. The bullet pierced the air, split the air, and sent out bursts of sonic booms in the air, as if the space was being torn apart. Deadly black bullets arrive in an instant. The moment Beckman fired, everyone on the deck stopped looking at the white-haired young man who was uttering wild words and sighed. Dead, this child must be dead. Beckman is really merciless. A person who has learned moonwalk at such a young age is obviously quite a genius, but he really shouldn't mention the boss's broken arm in front of us. He is really looking for death. Originally, he still had a glimmer of hope, but who made him young and energetic? He actually uttered arrogant words to the deputy captain when he was about to die. He was really tired of living. Yes, no one has dared to say this in front of the deputy captain for a long time. Ha 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 ha, you are a young man. If you are not angry, why would you call him a young man? Don't worry, our boss will not let him die. Cheng Cheng's eyes were fixed on the black bullet that was shooting straight at him, calmly. The moment before Beckman fired, his right hand reached for the Zhenhai sword behind his back. 5 fingers suddenly clenched the hilt of the Zhenhai sword, and instantly a strong aura spread out from Cheng Cheng's body, and his entire right arm was wrapped in a dark-armed color. Then the dark-armed domineering energy spread from the arm to the Zhenhai sword at an extremely fast speed, and the Zhenhai sword turned from gray to black. Boom! In an instant, a long whirlwind of black bullets collided with the Zhenhai sword, causing sparks to fly. Cheng Cheng, who blocked the Zhenhai sword in front of him, instantly felt a huge impact and was knocked back dozens of steps in the air. Then, using the impact of the retreat, he rotated the Zhenhai sword, and a huge crescent-shaped sword energy roared out, breaking through the air and slashing towards Beckman. It's rude to come and not reciprocate. The speed of the huge sword energy was not much slower than a bullet, and it arrived in front of Beckman in an instant. There was a look of surprise in Beckman's eyes, and with a wave of his hand, he smashed the huge sword energy that arrived in front of him into the sea beside him. Advertisement. In an instant, there was a loud bang, water splashed in all directions, and the seawater was blown up dozens of meters. So strong, Cheng Cheng couldn't help but admire in his heart. He is worthy of being a strong man at the level of the Emperor's deputy, who can resist his own sword energy so easily. Cheng Cheng looked at Beckman, who was sitting leisurely on the mast. With just this simple shot, he was knocked back dozens of steps, and the right hand holding the sword hilt was even numb from the shock. He couldn't help but change his left hand to hold the sword, and stretched his right hand behind his back to swing it gently. That's it. Cheng Cheng raised the corners of his mouth and looked at Beckman with a flat smile. Everyone in the red-haired pirate group was stunned, looking at Cheng Cheng with complicated eyes. They all knew how strong Beckman was. He seemed to have fired a simple shot, but it was not as simple as it seemed. Vice Captain, this guy is provoking you, ha 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 ha. Beckman, you are looked down upon by others. This kind of thing hasn't happened for a long time. After seeing Cheng Cheng blocking Beckman's shot so easily, these people also called Cheng Cheng from young man to old guy, which was obviously an affirmation of Cheng Cheng's ability. At this time, some people looked at Cheng Cheng with more trust. Could it be that everything this guy said before was true? The red-haired Shanks stood up with a laugh, drank the glass of red wine in one gulp, placed it heavily on the table, looked at everyone and sighed. The last time I saw such an interesting young man was when Ace came, right? Yeah, but this guy seems to be much stronger than Ace at that time. That's right, I think so too. Everyone nodded in agreement. Beckman, This guy doesn't look weak, why don't you try the water again? Shanks looked up at Beckman and said. Beckman looked calm, put away the flintlock rifle in his hand, and said slowly. It's one shot, just one shot, there's no point in shooting again. The red-haired man said aggrievedly, but I really want to see you shoot. Beckman who shoots is so handsome. Beckman rolled his eyes and was too lazy to pay attention to the captain who often had convulsions. He said to Cheng Cheng in the distance. You are now qualified to board the ship. Chapter 99 What do you want? Cheng Cheng calmed down his slightly hurried breathing, stepped on the moonwalk, and walked slowly towards the red foss. After Cheng Cheng's feet landed on the deck, Shanks also stood up and said with a hearty smile. Now that you are on the boat, you are my red-haired friend. It doesn't matter whether what you just said is true or false, ha 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 ha. Only when Cheng Cheng saw the red-haired man 1 meter away at close range did Cheng Cheng really see the man clearly. He has a well-proportioned figure, with only one button on his white shirt, and brown cropped trousers with patterns on his lower body. He wears flip-flops casually on his feet, making him look very casual. Only with the famous sword griffin slung across his waist can he be regarded as a captain. There were 3 slanted scars around his left eye, and the short stubble around his mouth not only did not make him look greasy, but instead added a bit of domineeringness that a mature man should have. Cheng Cheng also knew that a long time ago he was wearing a straw hat on his head, but later the straw hat was given to his brother Luffy. Red-haired Shanks, I finally see you, Cheng Cheng said with the same smile, then took the red wine handed over by the red-haired man and drank it in one gulp. The red-haired Shanks asked doubtfully, Are you looking for me? Cheng Cheng shook his head and did not answer the red-haired question. He was a grown man himself and could never say anything like, I have always wanted to meet you. You are the person I have admired since I was a child. Shanks, I came to you today to help you recover from your broken arm. Cheng Cheng shook the empty wine glass in his hand and said in a deep voice. Shanks smiled, turned around and slumped down on the chair. It's been so many years. My broken arm was eaten by a Poseidon in the East China Sea. How can I recover it? Don't tell me that you are installing a prosthetic limb on me. If that's the case, I can only thank you. The broken arm now feels quite manly to me. I no longer care about these things. After all, we are pirates. If we don't lack arms and legs, it won't feel like that. After the red-haired Shanks finished speaking, no one on the boat felt funny, and all of them looked serious. Cheng Cheng looked serious, stared at Shanks and said slowly, You may have misunderstood. I want to help you grow an arm again, not some bullshit prosthesis. Impossible. Impossible. No one in this world can do such a thing. The red-haired man shook his head and took a sip of wine with a smile. He himself is already at the top of this world, and he knows a little more than ordinary people. But in his mind, this thing is still impossible. Advertisement. Cheng Cheng just stood there, his pale golden eyes looking at Shanks very firmly.
Although Shanks didn't believe it, others around him became interested and looked at Cheng Cheng with increasing intensity.
The fat man biting the big bone came closer and asked, Can you really do it? Yes. Cheng Cheng replied briefly. Jesus came closer and asked, How do you know you will succeed? I've done it before. Cheng Cheng continued to answer. After everyone around heard Cheng Cheng's words, their eyes widened and their hearts were shocked. And the rock-hard look they looked at Cheng Cheng didn't seem fake. Is what he said true? Someone murmured softly. This made many people believe it. If this young man can really do it, it will definitely be the biggest happy event for their red-haired pirate group in these years.
Beckman jumped down from the high mast, tiptoed lightly, and landed on the deck. The fine cigarette in his mouth was emitting wisps of smoke. He looked at Cheng Cheng sharply and said, You are quite strong, but I hope you understand the consequences of deceiving our red-haired pirates. Cheng Cheng smiled and nodded gently, with a firm tone, If I can't do it, you can kill me. After hearing what Cheng Cheng said, those people finally looked at Cheng Cheng with a little more trust. Even Beckman was trembling slightly. He turned to the red-haired man and said, Captain, why don't you let him try? The redhead laughed loudly. Beckman, what's wrong with you today, that you even believe such a thing? Others around him started to persuade him. Boss, give it a try. I don't think this guy is someone who talks nonsense. That's right, let's give it a try. If this guy dares to lie, I'll kill him right now. Jesus stood aside and said, I think we might as well listen to what method he used to recover his arm first, and then we can judge the possibility of this matter. Advertisement. The red-haired man raised his hand and slowly poured 2 glasses of red wine and handed one to Cheng Cheng. Since the brothers have said so, I will listen to your approach. Cheng Cheng held the wine glass tightly, his palms full of sweat. He took a deep breath. This time when he came to see the red hair, the most dangerous moment was about to come.
Don't worry, even if you don't ask, I will tell you the specific method and the pros and cons, and then it's up to you to choose. Cheng Cheng leaned against the red foss and said in a deep voice, Shanks, if you want to grow a new arm, you must first sign a contract with me. After signing this contract, I have absolute control over you 3 times, and then I only need to consume the control once to make you grow your arms again. My method is that simple, and I personally did an experiment some time ago, so I am very confident. As for how to choose, it depends on you. As soon as Cheng Cheng finished speaking, everyone fell into silence. The lively atmosphere suddenly became peaceful and silent. No one spoke anymore. They all lowered their heads in deep contemplation with solemn expressions, quickly weighing the pros and cons of this matter in their minds. As the fog on the sea gradually dissipated, The visibility on the sea gradually increased, and the tip of the iceberg gradually emerged from the boundless sea. Cheng Cheng carefully looked at the structure of the ship and guessed where the check-in place for the mission was. However, if he did not solve the matter in front of him now, he would not be able to move around the ship at will. After a moment of silence, everyone on the deck slowly began to make sounds again. Isn't this guy telling the truth? Is this his devil fruit ability? If this is really the case, then the captain's arm may really recover, which is definitely a great thing for our red-haired pirates. No. This kind of thing is too dangerous. If what he said is true, then he has absolute control over the boss 3 times. Who knows what this guy of unknown origin will make the boss do? Yes, what if we use this to control the boss? Then our entire red-haired pirate group will be his puppets.
No, it's too risky. Even Vice Captain Beckman frowned and shook his head.
The red-haired man stared at Cheng Cheng's eyes for a while and suddenly asked, assuming what you said is true, how are you going to use the remaining 2 control rights? Or what do you want me to do for you? These are just trivial things, I will consume them directly in front of you. Cheng Cheng smiled and said, since Shanks asked this, he already believed it. Shanks raised his head and took a sip of wine and asked, since those 2 times of control were trivial matters, then why did you risk it and go through all the trouble to find me and help me reconnect my arm? In other words, what do you want from me? Chapter 100 Signing Shanks. There was a dead silence on the Red Fort, with countless scorching eyes looking at Cheng Cheng, all waiting for the white-haired young man's answer. When Cheng Cheng faced the looks of these people, he just smiled indifferently. If you really want to talk about it, I do have something to ask you for help with. All ears. The red-haired man said lazily. Cheng Cheng shook the wine glass in his hand and said in a deep voice. Shanks, you should know Ace, right? He is now chasing Blackbeard Teach. I have advised Ace not to go after him before, but Ace didn't listen to me.
Some time ago, I wrote another letter to Whitebeard, urging him to stop chasing Ace, but I guess Whitebeard wouldn't listen.
So, I would like to ask you to personally persuade Whitebeard and let him issue an order to recall Ace. Ace's temper is very stubborn. I'm afraid he will only listen if Whitebeard speaks. And I'm afraid Whitebeard can only listen to your persuasion. Anyone else's persuasion is useless. After Cheng Cheng finished speaking, he found Shanks looking at him strangely and asked, is this just a request?
No, that's all. Cheng Cheng spread his hands and said honestly. This matter had indeed been planned in his mind before he came.
The red-haired man shook his head and said, no, this is what I plan to do. It cannot be a condition for you to help me. No. The red-haired man suddenly looked at Cheng Cheng with wide eyes and asked in surprise. Who are you? Why are you so concerned about Ace's affairs? Cheng Cheng was also slightly stunned at this time and cursed secretly. He was so stupid. He was so excited that he forgot to mention the most critical issue of identity, so he hurriedly spoke. I am Cheng Cheng, the eldest brother of Ace, Sabo, and Luffy. Suddenly everyone on the deck became noisy. What, are you Luffy's eldest brother? Impossible. How come Luffy's stupid brother is so serious? And he's so strong? By the way, when we were in Windmill Village a few years ago, I really have an impression. At that time, there was a white-haired kid who drank with us all day long. That kid couldn't be him. After this person finished speaking, the old people who went to Windmill Village began to agree. Yeah, when you say that, I'm really impressed, but I've forgotten the child's name a long time ago. For a moment, everyone stared at Cheng Cheng seriously. Shanks, who was sitting on the chair, stretched his neck and looked at Cheng Cheng. Suddenly he slapped his thigh and stood up. He asked in surprise. Are you Cheng Cheng? Luffy's eldest brother? Cheng Cheng said helplessly. When we met many years ago, I was still young, so it's normal that you don't recognize me. After looking at it again for a while, Shanks finally confirmed Cheng Cheng's identity, and with difficulty, the white-haired child and the white-haired young man in front of him overlapped in his memory. Advertisement. Then he said, since it's you, I won't ask you what you want anymore. Tell me how to sign the contract, I believe you. After the red-haired man confirmed Cheng Cheng's identity, everyone no longer had any worries and looked at Cheng Cheng with more fanaticism. The fat man who was chewing on the big bone and meat tore off a big mouthful of fat and said firmly, Boy Cheng Cheng, if you really let the boss regain his arm, you will be my biological father, La Ji Lu. See you later. Kneel down once for me. Beckman, who was standing aside, just smoked cigarettes quickly, lighting them one after another. Uncle Fatty, don't say that, I can't afford it. After Cheng Cheng finished speaking with a smile, a white light flashed in the center of his palm, and a green jade bottle appeared. This bottle of water of life was prepared before he left Cayenne. In addition to saving lives, it could also sign a contract without the Great Holy Grail. After he opened the lid of the green jade bottle, everyone's eyes focused on the bottle. Shanks, shall we start? Cheng Cheng looked at the red hair and said. The redhead nodded slightly. What should I do next? Just stick out your hand, Cheng Cheng said with a smile. The red-haired man took off his shirt without any hesitation, revealing the hard-as-iron muscles of his upper body. The broken part of his left arm has already become scabbed, and it looks extremely miserable. Cheng Cheng tilted the jade bottle slightly and carefully poured out a drop of water of life. The water droplet fell on the tip of his index finger. The seemingly ordinary clear water burst into brilliant golden light at this moment, illuminating Cheng Cheng's entire face in a light golden color. Everyone on the deck held their breath and did not dare to disturb him in the slightest. Under the gaze of countless silent eyes, Cheng Cheng's fingertips slowly began to move, drawing a golden trajectory in the air. In my name, I swear by you, the stars will not fall, the heaven and the earth will last forever, I will die and you will die, and you will die and I will live. Shanks nodded again. Agree. As soon as the red-haired man finished speaking, Cheng Cheng's slowly moving fingers in the air suddenly became faster, and the golden track in the air was quickly pulled. Brush. 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 Cheng Cheng quickly applied it diagonally 3 times on the back of the red-haired right hand, and 3 diagonal golden lines appeared, echoing the 3 scars on the red-haired eye. Cheng Cheng closed his eyes and breathed a sigh of relief after feeling some mysterious connection with Shanks. Finally succeeded. Advertisement. Shanks squinted at the 3 extra golden lines on the back of his hand and said softly, "Is this the 3 times of control?" Cheng Cheng nodded without denying it. "Don't tell me, he's quite handsome." The red-haired man laughed heartily in an instant, "But I still don't believe that these 3 gadgets can restore my arms. Can they definitely allow you to control me?" The corners of Cheng Cheng's lips curled up in an astonishing arc. "You'll know soon, Shanks."
With my order, restore Shank's arm. Cheng Cheng raised his palm and shouted. In an instant, a golden line flew out from the backs of Cheng Cheng's and Hongfa's hands, and 2 lines emitting golden light poured into Shank's broken arm at the same time.
Where the arm was broken, golden light flourished. Beckman, Jesus BU and others all held their breath and stared at the arm. Fatty Lou took off the small sunglasses on his eyes, biting the big bone and meat in his mouth, and refused to let go. He just put the meat in his mouth, as if it was petrified. Then everyone's eyes opened wider and wider, and a wave of heat flowed in everyone's heart. Red-haired Shank's broken arm is growing back. Although the speed is very slow, it is really making flesh out of bones. At this time, it seemed that time had stood still, and no one knew how long it had passed. When Shanks looked at the freshman's left arm in disbelief, he swallowed. Then he tried to slowly raise his left arm, looking at the white palm, making a fist with 5 fingers, and the muscles on his left arm swelled a bit. After he released his palm, his legs were slightly bent, and his arm quickly made a fist again and pulled back. Countless gusts of strong wind around him quickly gathered towards his fist. Suddenly, Shank's entire left arm turned pitch black, and more strong wind lingered around his fist.
When he punched out, the air in front of him seemed to be compressed instantly, causing invisible ripples in the air in front of him. The wind of the fist tore through the air and made waves of roar. Immediately, an invisible air shock wave rushed towards the sea. Above the calm sea, it was like a bomb was dropped. Boom. After a loud noise, the sea water was splashed hundreds of meters high. The red-haired pirates on the deck, including Shanks, all bowed deeply towards Cheng Cheng. He was reluctant to get up for a long time.